I now call the Ripon City Council meeting for Tuesday, August 2nd to session. Will everybody please stand and do the Pledge of Allegiance with me? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Will you please remain standing for the invocation?
Mr. Mayor, City Council, thank you for the privilege. Let's go ahead and bow before our Lord. Father, we come before you this evening just with this City Council in mind and the meeting here, Lord, and we ask that you give these men and women just a sense of justice, Lord, a sense of equality, and a kind of wisdom in making the decisions, Lord, that really forms and shapes our city. Bless this meeting now. We pray this all in the name of Christ. Amen.
Amen. Tricia, will you do the roll call, please?
Yes. Councilmember Leo Zuber.
Present.
Councilmember Mark Winchell.
Present.
Councilmember Michael Rastusha.
Present.
Vice Mayor Dean Euchre.
Here.
Mayor Jake Parks.
Present. I will now open up the City Council to public discussion. This time is provided for the public to address the City Council on any item that is not on the agenda. If you have such concerns, please step up to the podium, state your name and address.
Mr. Mayor, my name is Colleen Medeiros. I live at 305 Van Dyken Way. Tonight, I would like to raise the issue of how TPR is managing Mislin Field. My 12-year-old tried out and made it for a travel baseball team. After 2 practices in Manteca, I was thrilled to learn that the rest of the practices would be at Mislin. It's a far better field for competitive ball, and it's the home field. My excitement soon faded. I arrived at practice to find that TPR is charging $3 per person to watch practice. I have 3 other children with me. That means that I would have to pay $12 per practice twice a week for 3 months. That would add approximately $240 or more onto the registration fees on top of the entrance fees into the games. This was not my first bad experience with TPR, so I refused to pay on principle, and instead I took my 3 other children to watch from outside the fence in center field. In my frustration, I posted about this issue on the Ripon, California Facebook page. What followed was a lengthy list of comments from others in the community that had similar experiences and feelings towards TPR. Complaints poured in about the rude, invasive, threatening, and deceitful way people have been treated by TPR. Complaints ranged from TPR purposely waiting until the gate fees had been collected to announce that games had been canceled for weather, understaffed officials, poor field maintenance, and to rifling through a 14-year-old's feminine products, and on and on. I own 2 businesses in Ripon, one of which is a barber shop. Someday my father-in-law will retire, and Troy and I will have to lease out his chair. When we choose somebody, we will be certain that that person gives quality service, treats our customers with respect, never ever makes them feel taken advantage of, and both supports and contributes to our community. I know that our reputation, our integrity, and our commitment to being an asset to the community are our foundation. Weaken that, and the whole thing crumbles. That's not just my businesses, it's hundreds of them. It's our grocery and hardware stores. It's our community doctors. It's our restaurants, our locksmiths, our farmers, our tailors, our insurance agents, and our mechanics, and on and on. Quality service, respect, integrity, value, and community service is what makes our business community unique and great. My question to the board is, do you hold your businesses to the same standard? You have been entrusted with a very valuable community asset. The people you have chosen to manage it on your behalf are alienating the people of which this facility was meant to benefit. You don't have to condone that. I know you have a lease, but you don't have to just wipe your hands of it. You can acknowledge that TPR is not managing Missland Field in a manner that is reflective or complimentary of our city. You can take our grievances to TPR and make it clear that changes need to be made in order to better serve the community and our visiting neighbors. You can influence them by letting them know that community input will greatly factor into any future bidding and lease renewals. TPR either needs to adopt Ripon's principles or they need to be shown the door. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Colleen. Is there any other member of the community that would like to get up and speak? Yes, please state your name and address.
Hi, Mr. Mayor. My name is Jacob Curtis. I'm at 1010 Jordan Hollow. So I came in back in March and had the same discussion, typically with TPR, same kind of principles that Colleen just went over. And we had some meetings, myself and Kai, and since then I had a response back from him from my complaints, and I still think there's some sort of understanding that we don't understand each other right now. So some of the items that still are bugging me and some of the people in the City of Ripon posts that we saw on Facebook, there's a listing on there in the contract that you have to have available playtime on Tuesdays and Thursdays for the community. It states now on the wall, on the fence there, it states that. But the add-on that is not in the contract, it says on game days. So in the contract, there's no mention. First come, first served basis on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 3:30 to 5. Doesn't say game days. I don't know why that got added in from TPR and that was allowed, but I don't see how you can add that in the contract afterwards. Section 2.5, it came to my concerns personally and why I present. For some reason, my conversation with Kai, it got put to a team I was managing, the Bandits, and his comments had to do with the Bandits were kicked out of a tournament, this and that. That was just discussions I was having with him on the side. Had nothing to do with my relationship with TPR. That was one incident that I personally had offense to. That had nothing to do with the fact that they bag check everyone, they steal your Gatorades, put them on display, kind of like a mockery, haha, we caught you. The fact that they don't refund money on rainouts, all those things, those are the reasons I came and presented. Had nothing to do with my team messing a rule book that I wasn't aware of. So I'm not sure why that got put in there, but nothing to do with it. So Exhibit C, TPR baseball, inspected with the city, and the fields are in good condition, and TPR has maintained the fields to the satisfaction of the city. This is coming from Kai again. I would just request that if there's a possibility to go out and do maybe an impromptu inspection, I'd love to see what you guys are doing in that process, because I went to a game last week, and I still see, you can barely see the catcher's feet because they're sunk into the dirt. You can still see the hole where the pitcher lands, the same hole that my 10-year-old teammate or child on my team hurt his knee in, still there. So I'm not sure exactly what was inspected, what was approved, but if you can set that up, that'd be fantastic. The website. Missland Field's website is a non-functioning website. So the domain was purchased by TPR for baseball for future use, but is not a currently functioning website. So in my time that I got here early, just went on my smartphone, checked it again. It's a pretty good functioning, non-functioning website because it's still up. Still can click on it, see where you're going. Talks all about City of Ripon, the great fields you have. This is the first thing that people from outside of Ripon see. And then they click on it. Let's go check out the batting cages. Oh, they'll be ready in 2015. Let's go check out the gate fees. Oh, it's $3, but when I get there, it's $5. Not sure what a non-functioning website is. To me, that means you click on it and it doesn't go anywhere. That's a non-functional website. So either get them to take it down, because it's just terrible information we're passing along. Lastly, the budget. So I sat down with Lisa Roos twice before presenting. She showed me the budget of how, in her terms, from her own explanation, she showed me Ripon Parks and Rec is losing $135,400 annually running Missland Sports Park. Now, I understand that also includes soccer, baseball. When I met with Kai, he wanted to try to tell me how it was more that the sports park is the whole, you got to separate the baseball. I'm still confused because from my understanding, it was more like, no, we don't lose money from the baseball. So there's still some sort of disconnect between what Lisa had to say, what Kai presented to me. I still would like to find out, are we losing money there? If so, I'm not sure why we were okay continuing to sign contracts that lost us money. Let's see here. If it's losing $30,000, if it's losing $5,000, it'd just be good to know what that true number is. So I'd love to be able to sit down with someone and truly understand that. Lastly, the thing I talked with Kai about was there's a percentage of concessions that the TPR receives from every game they have. They have to pay the city a portion, the city gets a portion, TPR gets a portion. There's been a couple tournaments that I went back on, looked with Lisa Roos, and I can see where TPR did not report income for a rained out weekend. So say Saturday, they played, people bought food, Sunday, rain out. It shows on there, no games, canceled due to rain. Kai's mentioned to me, well, they probably re-up, the next week. They'll probably stayed in there. There was extra money from the week before. That was not presented to me back from Kai. So not sure if they're just stealing the money, if Kai didn't get an answer. Again, these all seem like red flags. It seemed like perfectly good reasons to have some sort of 30-day notice to them, to be able to get them on warning, to get corrections, to be able to fix this. Because again, it's our backyard. We want to use it. I don't know why we can't use it and have to pay money to watch our kids play or practice. It just seems silly. So we're just trying to get resolved. We really want to make sure that it's being the best interest for what we have here, what we want to invest our time in with our kids, and have that facility to be able to use. So thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Councilman Zuber.
I want to go back to I don't understand what you were saying about public access and game days.
Okay.
That made no sense to me at all.
So in section 1.8 in the contract that TPR signed with the city and the city signed with TPR, it says public access. TPR acknowledges and agrees that the sports fields shall be open to the public without charge on a first-come, first-served basis on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 3:30 to 5. That's what the contract states. Now, the answer I got from Kai and now what's posted on the sign at the fields says almost that, with the except for on league days, which they have league games pretty much Monday through Friday nowadays. So that kind of defeated the whole purpose. If you go to BLD, you can go practice there from 3 to 5, all that kind of stuff.
I'm still not there. Are you saying then that on days when TPR has something scheduled, the open access days are not there?
So on days that they have something scheduled as far as a league game, on their sign it says it would not be open, correct?
Okay, that's all I need. Thanks.
Sure.
Does the council have any other questions? No. Seeing none?
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and City Council members. My name is Bill Long, and as you know, I'm on Planning Commission. And
Bill, what address are you at?
I'm at 1463 Guy Place.
Perfect. Thank you.
What I wanted to let you know is I did meet with Colleen and Jacob to talk about this situation and kind of observe for myself what's going on. Fact of the matter is, there are parents sitting in the outfield behind the fence, they're not inside, because of the cost prohibitiveness of paying $3 per person. It doesn't matter if it's your child, doesn't matter if it's a grandparent, doesn't matter what relationship you are, you have to pay $3 to get through that gate. I watched Colleen's husband challenge him on that, says, what is this all about? Now, I personally played baseball for years, and I'd be willing to bet most of you up there probably played some level of ball yourselves. Can you remember in all of your years ever having to pay to watch your child practice? Just let that sink in for a minute. I can't ever remember having to pay for practice. Then I go into it a little bit further. They have concession stands inside that facility. Why would you want to charge potential customers to the concession stand money to come in to use your concession stand? Jake, you had a coffee shop. I mean, just to get into your coffee shop, do you think you should have been charging us $2 to come in the door? How do you think that would work financially, Mike? I don't get how that works. And here we are, we're charging the citizens of Ripon $3 a head to come in and watch their child practice on what should be their home field. Where does home field advantage go if you can't practice on your own field? You got to go to the city park fields. Oh, those are free, but it's not your home field. So I just wanted to be straight up, let you know that, yeah, I find this a little bit odd. I don't understand the context of all the contract issues. That's why, I talked to Jacob and got his viewpoint on it. There's probably lots of things I do not know, but I would really appreciate it if one of you would really take a look at this and see what's going on, because I think the citizens of Ripon are getting a raw deal. You want to charge to attend baseball games when they have to pay to play? Come on. That's all I got to say.
Thank you very much, Bill. Ma'am, are you going to speak to TPR as well?
No, I am not.
Oh, you're not? Okay, so I just want to make sure. Is everybody who has spoken on TPR, have they had a chance to speak? Okay, perfect. I want to make sure that everybody got a chance to talk that wanted to. So thank you very much.
Good evening. My name is Debbie Swopa Musey. I live at 345 Rose Court. I have several other properties in the city of Ripon, and I came tonight to see if the council was aware of a situation that's going on where I have horses and chickens around other horses and chickens, all in the same area, and to ask if you might consider a couple of options that are time sensitive and looming over us. I lease a property over the Fulton Overpass just to the left between the Remersmas, where's the canal, and where the Indians have the truck washout, and the, the gas, what is that gas station called? Pilot or? Pilot. Mm-hmm. No.
Jimco.
No.
It's a card lock.
Yeah, the card lock.
Yeah.
We all know which one it is.
Pacific Pride. There you go. Thank you. So that big field, everybody sees it when they go over. It's not irrigated. We just have water based on rainfall, and then we haul water, and everything works on a gravity flow. I've been over there for many years, approximately 16 years. And in April, my mom passed away. I was gone to Washington, and while I was gone, sometime during April and the beginning of May, Elizabeth Forks came over and spoke with my husband, Don Musey, who works for the city of Ripon, and said that she was investigating this situation with these horses out here, and that when she got her details and her facts and figures together, we would be receiving notice about moving these animals off this property. Well, I didn't really know what all that was about. But when I arrived back, I did receive a letter signed by Chief of Police, and promptly called him, set up a meeting with Elizabeth Forks and Steve Merchant. And we didn't get too far on that because it went through zoning. There was apparently a complaint. I was told by Kenny Zeidevart and the chief of police, and the meeting that we went to with Dean Euchre, that the city enforces code based on a complaint. So I asked for the complaint. You can't seem to get the person who made the complaint. They can come in anonymously or whatever. But on many occasions, I have asked, what is the complaint? The horses and chickens are there. With horses and chickens, with Mangalos' horses and chickens. It's nice to have them all in one place. I could never really get the bottom of what the complaint is, but then did discuss with Ken that it seems to be a zoning issue. Now, what citizen in town would make a complaint on a zoning issue? And furthermore, I got an explanation from Ken that you can't use the fact that you've been there for so long, and that I had communication with Scheidecker when Scheidecker was here before I ever put horses and chickens out there. And he's like, that's perfect. That's perfect location. That's a great way to keep the weeds and everything down. Ken told me, you can't use the fact that you've been out there for this long as a justification for continuing the use. It's like somebody who speeds all the time and then they finally get caught and you say, but I've been speeding all these years. But that's not the case. I didn't know I was violating anything. And furthermore, it was a win situation. I leased that ground. It was a win for the owners. It was a win for the city of Ripon. We've had all kinds of activities with Bethany Home, kindergarten classes, farm visits, all kind of things. And they're all right there together. Now, we do have other property in town that is farmed, and it's in the high rent district. Out on Moeller Road, how do you think those people would like it? A whole bunch of horses and chickens moving in. Now, we've always had horses and chickens out there, but it's not a good option. Why take a win-win situation for everybody and make it a bad situation? So some of the information that went on at meetings, I'll just kind of run down how we went on this. May 27th, I got a letter from Elizabeth Forks saying that I had 30 days to get all this stuff off. Otherwise, it would be a fine, $90 per animal. And that they would come and confiscate whatever animals I had left out there. Then I had a meeting with Steve Merchant and Elizabeth Forks. Then I had a meeting with Ken Zeidevart, and we went over some suggestions on how to become compliant, and took Ken's advice on getting a meeting with the grievance committee. And the Code Enforcement Committee is the actual name, and Dean Euchre sat in on that, and Terpstra's Rosie sat in on that, and Ted was there, Chief Police was there, Fire Chief was there. I can't remember who all. Mm-hmm. But anyway, out of that meeting...
So you had some people who were there. So just so that way we can, I just want to make sure we're understanding you completely, that you've...
It's your Code Enforcement Committee.
Yeah. Yeah, that they were all there, and that it was brought up at that time.
Ken wasn't there, okay. But everybody else was there. But as far as the council, the only person there was Dean. And there was misinformation. Apparently they meet before I come in, and then they meet again after I come in. First off, I had text the night before saying, are we having the meeting or not? There was no confirmation of the meeting. Now, I had requested this meeting and said that I was going to get confirmation from Elizabeth Forks. She never communicated with me. Are we having the meeting or aren't we having the meeting? Of course we're having the meeting. If you're not going to be there, let us know so we can let everybody else know. Secondly, she said, I've only been out there with horses and chickens for 2 years. Now, clearly, anybody who's lived in Ripon, who's gone over the Fulton Overpass, they know I've been out there for more than 2 years. According to the Chief of Police's own records, I've been out there for more than 2 years. For her to say that I've only been out there 2 years, it's ridiculous. Where do they get this information? Thirdly, she said I had no relationship with Ted Matsey, the owner. He's the representative owner of the field. Clearly, he lives just a block down, right across from the Barnwood. He and I have a very good relationship. And she told the committee, and then Rosie came back from Terpstra's office saying, you could be in violation of trespassing. Where does that come from? That kind of misinformation going on when you're trying to resolve a problem. I don't think it's very good PR for the PD. I don't think it's very good resolution for the council to work with community members And it's got to stop. And then the last thing, I've never seen the complaint. I've never even heard what the complaint is. It came from Ken that I'm out of compliance with zoning. And I was also told that it's based on complaint basis. So is the council making this complaint? Is the zoning making this complaint? Is it a citizen making this complaint? I think that information should be available. You don't have to say who exactly is making the complaint. But if someone's being accused and they have to go through a lot of effort and time and money to make things right, you ought to be able to see your accuser.
It was a citizen.
Well, then what was the complaint? Yeah, I mean, we'd like to know.
Nobody revealed that.
Yeah, we'd like to know what the complaint is. So anyway, through our process, there was an extension of some time granted, and the options were to change the zoning on the property because there's 2 different parcels, or to come to the council and ask for interim use, if you would grant an interim use until the property is developed, or go through a zoning text amendment, which would involve a lot of paperwork, a huge fee of nearly $2,000, and time. I don't think that's a viable option. But I'm here to ask you to consider this. If you're not aware of this, I'm not here representing all of the people in the North Point development that just went through. Last year, was it? Last year or the year before. But apparently there are many people who are getting complaints from citizens and letters of noncompliance. And, there are some things moving in the city of Ripon, but why move animals, citizens, people, when it's a win-win for everybody at the moment? So I'm just bringing this so you are aware of this. We elect you people to make good decisions, and we hire these people over here to follow through with what's reasonable and decent and to tell the truth. And I would really appreciate it if you would consider those things. And time is of the essence. Thank you
very much. Councilman Winchell?
Yes, you had mentioned that you were gone for a while. I haven't heard anything about any of this, but just thinking about complaints, do you think possibly someone thought that the animals were not being taken care of properly? Do you have someone out there every day taking care of those?
Back and forth. I drive that little electric buggy around. I think everybody in town knows me. But yeah, my husband was here, and he was, and we're back and forth there many times a day. We just live a couple blocks, and yeah. And if you look at all my horses, they're all very well cared for. And
okay, I was just I've seen the horses and the animals there, and I just was wondering if maybe someone's concern was whether they were being properly taken care of. But
yeah, they're very well cared for.
okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Seeing none.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
I wasn't sure that you were all aware of that, so that is why I'm here, because
Yeah. No, thank you. Thank you very much for bringing
Thank
that to
you.
our attention. So I was unaware of that situation. So, yes. So, all right. So seeing nobody else, that closes the public discussion section of the Ripon City Council meeting. Do we have the approval of the minutes?
I'll move to approve.
Second.
Mark, you actually, so Mark approved it, but he wasn't here last meeting. So he can still vote on that? Okay, he can still vote. Okay, I was thinking he had to abstain. Okay. So do we have a motion for the approval of the agenda as posted or amended?
Well, no,
Wait,
no,
hold on.
hold on. You didn't give me a chance. You were going to make a motion. I didn't stop you.
Yeah.
I've got a few items to pull from the consent agenda. Everybody got their pen ready? Mm-hmm. It's a list. 2G,
Wait, slow down. Okay.
3A, 3B, 3C, 4I, and 4N.
Councilman Winchell?
I'd like to pull item 4A and 4B, please.
Why don't we pull them all?
Okay,
And I like to pull 4K.
4K. Okay, so here's what we have so far pulled. We'll just go through the list of them. We have 2G, 3A, 3B, C, 4AB, 4I, 4K, and 4N. I miss anything?
Can you say that again?
You get one shot at it. That's all you get. Yeah. Okay. So if those are all the items that are pulled, do we have a motion to?
So move.
Second.
Wait. Okay. So we will start off with 2G, and because we have
Some of these are
so many being pulled, yeah, we're going to go through right in order. So whichever ones are yours, just make sure you're ready to take them.
Okay, so we're all Leos.
Oh,
except for 4A and 4K
except for
and 4B.
yeah, 2% of them aren't Leos. Yeah.
90% of Leos.
Or 2G, how close are we to being finished with this?
Yeah, I could take this, Mr. Mayor. Our contractor is about 98% complete. We've got over 2,000 of the new water meters installed, 2,600 of the retrofits installed. About 90% of the transponders are currently active, and the remaining 10% should be active by next month, which would mean all metered customers within town will be on the automated reading system.
So
right now-
90% of the total customers are active right now?
Correct, yes.
Okay, we're getting close.
And 98% is done.
Yeah, they're working on minor site restoration items and some other minor punch list items. So.
Okay, thank you.
3A.
For 3A, some of these transfers are to eliminate deficits in some of the landscaping districts, is that right?
That's correct.
Is this, I got to figure out how to say this right. Some of these have been operating at a deficit for years because when they were set up, they don't generate enough money to pay the cost. So does this bring them to zero at the end of the 2015-16 school budget year?
Yes.
So all past deficits are gone?
That's right.
And so in theory, we could at the end of every fiscal year now just pay off those deficits instead of letting them get up big like they have been.
That's right. And I think what this does, it makes it a little clearer how much they're all operating in the deficit.
Okay, fine. 3B. This is sort of a question because I've already asked for this report, but in reading this thing, this is transferring over $1 million from various accounts into the street and road fund. This is why I want that report when we have the budget, because what it doesn't tell me is what I got for that $1 million on streets and roads.
That's right. And
Okay.
what we're planning on doing is providing council, we're putting together a written report that summarizes for the year a breakdown of the expenses and what those look like, and then also a summary of the road repair that was done for the fiscal
Okay.
year.
Thank you. Did I say 3C too?
Yes.
3C.
Okay.
Yep.
Didn't you write them down?
That was a joke. No, I got notes right here.
Here, use mine.
My concern about this is, in my mind, when we approve this process for having permit parking in wherever the residents wanted it, when we passed that, I thought it was going to be that you got permit parking in this area and you had it all the time. This proposal here is less than full time. It only says it's going to be in effect from Memorial Day to Labor Day. The rest of the time, no permit parking. I don't know how I'm going to vote yet, but that bothers me to some extent, because to me that's sort of like step one towards customized permit parking. And I'm not sure, A, I'm not sure that's what we wanted. B, I'm not sure I agree with that. C, I am sure that if we had there, I don't want that man over there having to decide this one's okay and this one's not. Because there was a specific problem that we were addressing when we approved this. And this is still in that area. But this is one of those, what is it, the nose of the camel under the tent? And it bothers me a little bit. That's all.
I think you're right. We had special reasons why we were doing this permit parking was because of the traffic overflow and those types of things. And now if we're going back and looking at it, trying to do everything in hindsight and mass customization, I think it's going to add a lot of extra bureaucratic layers that are going to have to be gone through. I think that it's going to take away time from PD and their resources and what they're doing. And then even to remember where they're supposed to be at what time of year and who exactly has permit parking. I'm with Leo on this one. I don't know if I necessarily agree going with this route. Just because then you'll have everybody in front of us trying to ask for permit parking, during school years or during this or during, Hanukkah or during 4th of July and things like that. And I think it's going to lead us down a bad road. So, Councilman Winchell.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the whole idea was, with the dates they've given us, was it's the hot days of the year, and the kids are out of school, and so the area is really impacted. But I think that it should be just year-round, and that way we wouldn't have to deal with, when is it to be enforced and when not to be enforced. And besides, maybe it'll get popular in the winter, and we're going to have to enforce those parking permits then anyway. Thank you.
Councilmember Stusha.
Question and a comment. So is this something the people there asked for, these specific dates? Because isn't this something that they all agreed to and have to vote on before it comes here?
Yes, the residents in the 400 block of South Meyenberg and McBrien requested these specific dates, and they were actually noted on the ballot. If the resolution does not pass tonight, it'll have to go for a revote for the extended time period. We worked on this with some of the committee members that are on the residential parking permit committee for that area, and this was determined to be the dates that they're most affected by the overflow of parking. And outside of those timeframes, they don't anticipate or believe that there'll be a parking issue on their residential streets. So they only wanted it for the specific times that they would be most heavily affected, and that's why there was a narrow time frame.
So 2 comments. One is they can get as many permits as they want, so it really doesn't matter even if it's all year round. But the second thing was, I've talked to a lot of people out there, and so here's what I got was, when we put parking permit here, these people didn't want it before, it sounds like, but now that they're being impacted because there's no parking here, and I'll tell you, it's going to keep moving. Then the next group's going to want some parking permits because you can't park here. The whole area is going to be parking permitted at some point. I mean, I would just get ready for that.
Right. Well, originally we had submitted for the whole Ripon Bluffs neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
I remember.
And this location, and there's one more location that the ballots are going to be going out Friday, and that's for the 400 block of South Manley. The 400 block South Manley, McBrien, the 400 block of South Meyenberg and Reynolds were the original areas that we proposed that review and vote on the parking permit program. We expanded that to give the whole Ripon Bluffs neighborhood an opportunity. And when that was voted down, the areas that would have passed on their own are now going by themselves through the ballot process. So Meyenberg and McBrien would have passed originally if it was just those sections that were not included in the Ripon Bluffs neighborhood. So these areas that we're going to pass that are closest to the Bike Bridge area and Reynolds and Parallel Avenue that are mostly affected by it would have passed originally if they weren't included in the bigger group. But we decided this was the best course of action to take because of that simple fact that eventually, more than likely, everybody in that neighborhood is going to be impacted. And when we had our meetings, that's what we kind of foreshadowed to the residents. The ones that would have passed originally are going back again individually and getting them passed as part of a parking permit program.
Right, because conceptually, you don't want to be part of it until this is now blocked and people start parking in front of your place. Now all of a sudden you want to have it. Then when that gets impacted, they're going to move down. So I'm just saying, I think it's going to keep moving. So
yeah, the only other area that I've been contacted by about a parking permit program is a 400 block of South Manly. And like I said, they submitted a letter with the majority of the residents requesting it. That's what I request to show the significant interest in the parking permit program before we move on. They submitted that last week, so the ballots will go out this Friday for that residential neighborhood. They're asking for 24/7 permit parking because of their area and because of what affects them. So the only area that would be part of the parking permit program, which would be Reynolds, South Meyenberg, South Manly, McBrien, would be the McBrien and Meyenberg area that would be for that limited time period.
So one last question. So if this gets turned down and they go back and we say that we'd really like to have everything to be consistent so that we don't have to worry about, which month it is, what day it is, they still wouldn't be negatively impacted because they would be able to get their permits, right? And if you have guests coming over, you've got permits for those people all year round, correct?
If they receive enough ballots that
That's
vote
what I
in
mean.
favor. There was some concern for off-season activity because of other things that go on in people's lives where they have additional people come to the residence that they didn't, some residents in that area didn't want to mess with it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So that's what was presented. I just going at the will of the people in that area at this point in time. It would have to go up for revote if it did not pass tonight, and then they can make a determination whether or not they wanted it for the entire year or abandon it.
Thanks, Chief.
Councilman Zuber.
I have one question, probably for Mr. Terpstra. Is it possible, the way the ordinance is written now, for us to approve this for a specified time period, like 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, so that if I'm wrong, we can renew it and move on? If I'm right, we're not stuck in something. We have a chance to reconsider it down the road.
Yeah, that is something that I think you could do under the ordinance. I don't have the ordinance right in front of me because we didn't anticipate that being an issue tonight.
Because that would be my
I'm the last person to read the ordinance, that's clear.
That would be one, to me, that's one way to deal with this. I'm assuming a worst-case scenario. I have no problem saying that. I don't want the city or the city council in a position where we've gotten ourselves into a problem and there's no way to get out of it. No. Whereas if we don't get ourselves into a problem, the thing can go on ad infinitum as far as I'm concerned.
I think you could approve it subject to a time limit, as you said, like for a year, and then bring it back and take a look at this. And I think during that time, as we, this is on.
It's on.
We're good.
Yeah.
I think as we live into this, as more examples of this come up, as we're starting to see, we can start to see what makes sense and maybe make some changes to the ordinance. Because you have to keep in mind too, and I mindful of what the ordinance says and why it's there.
But this is, we are dealing with public streets, and we are dealing with, folks who have the right to park on a public street in most situations, and we're curtailing that and granting the property owners in these cases additional rights that they didn't have prior to. So we want to be careful with that. So I could support from a staff standpoint a 1-year sort of a trial period, see how we work into it.
If we were to go back and extend it an additional year, would they have to re-vote on it, or would that vote, the original vote, still be good?
I think we would probably consider the original vote, but it's
Okay.
the council's action that's limiting.
Okay, okay. I just wanted to make sure that I was understanding
That's a fair
that one,
question,
yeah.
and I'm interpreting on the fly, but I believe that would be the
Okay.
case. Yeah.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Chief Ormonde.
Under Chapter 10.58.100, it gives the residents that are included in an existing parking permit program the ability to go back and modify or make changes, but they have to request that through the parking manager, and that's through the police department. So if that was to occur, that those changes would need to come back in front of the city council.
I just would like to ask the chief, are you okay with this change? Your department and
Yes.
everything? So,
I'm fine with the
I
request.
mean, you have to deal with it, obviously.
The only thing different would be that we'd make a slight modification to the parking permit signs that are currently in existence along Reynolds, and then the regular 2/3 of the year we wouldn't have any enforcement in that area. So I'm fine with what's being proposed.
So do we wait until we get through all the pulled items, or
Yes.
can this? Okay.
Yeah. So
I'm going to reserve the right to make the motion for this one when we come back to it.
That's what I was going to do. So just judging by the tenor of the conversation, we will take item 3C separate from all the other items so far. So we will take item 4A next.
Thank you very much. On line I, this is the, right here. Oops. Yeah, okay, line I. This is the drone ordinance. It says that no person shall operate any model aircraft or drone within the city of Ripon above or within 100 feet of any organized event, including but not limited to any sporting event, festival, fair, or otherwise. 100 feet is not very much. It's maybe from here to the other side of the building. I think we should, if someone is putting on a sporting event and you've got someone with a drone out there zooming around within 100 feet, that's way too close. I think we should increase that to like 500 feet. And then that way they won't be harassed by the noise. And 100 feet up isn't that high either. So I would like to see us change that, give them a little bit more room than 100 feet.
Any comments from the council? All right, seeing none, we will move on to 4B. Who is up for 4B?
Okay, yes.
Councilman Winchell.
Okay, this has to do with the massage parlor businesses. And I'm just wondering that the most recourse that we have is when we find these people in sexual acts or prostitution or whatever, all we can do is charge them with a misdemeanor, and they're hit up with a $1,000 fine and a possible of 6 months in jail. Can you, Tom?
Well, this is obviously in addition to any criminal remedies that might be available. There might be depending on the nature of the offense, there are also criminal proceedings that could be initiated independently of what our ordinance provides.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay. 4I. COG.
This has to do with the funding for the bus. we're going to get $50,000. What happens if we don't spend all that money? That's a lot of money for that program, right?
It is. That's for the operations of the Blossom Express. I don't think we're that far off from it on our annual expenses, but it is a lot of money. If we don't spend it all, it does stay with Ripon, and the San Joaquin Council of Governments does track that. So a lot of times that money can be available for certain capital purchases, whether it's bike racks, radios for the bus, design of a multimodal station, or to go towards the funding of a multimodal station, something of that sort.
So we keep it, and it's available for some expenditures, but they have to be related to the transit system.
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Is this, Kevin, from what you've seen, does it look like this funding is going to be available for the foreseeable future? Or is it going to be something where in a couple of years we're, like other, measures, we're going to be looking at reduced funding?
No, this is a specific excuse me. This is a specific category in the Measure K renewal.
Okay.
So it's 25 more years left.
Okay, so we don't need to create like a rainy day fund or anything like that
And it goes up
for its
over
operation.
time.
Okay.
Yes, and it goes up over time.
Okay. Thank you. So, 4K.
That's mine. I just wanted to pull this because, as you know, a lot of us, other people donate an awful lot of money and donate different things to the city in various different places. And I just want to recognize, because this is on a consent item and people don't always want to be recognized to donate money, but the McDonald Family Trust is donating a bench worth $2,300 to the city of Ripon. I just want to publicly thank them for that. That's it.
Thank you very much. Last one, 4N.
My only question is that I note in there that I'm assuming it's going to come back to us, but part of this is that you're planning to hire a consultant to oversee the building of that house. Do we have any idea? Do you know how much that's going to cost? And if so, is that part of this motion, or will that have to be a separate agreement that comes back?
That'll be a separate agreement that comes back. In the past, we have contracted with the county, who oversaw the construction of the homes. That's someone that comes in and looks at the construction, also looks at all the items that they're choosing for the house, and making sure they're staying within the specs of what they bid on the house. And that person has since retired from the county. And so we'll be bringing back a proposal for services for someone to come do that for us for this house that we're hopefully going to award tonight.
So the action tonight is simply to award the job to contractor A?
Correct.
Okay.
Why couldn't we do that in-house?
We don't have the staffing for that.
I mean, we inspect every house.
I'll maybe let Ted speak to that. He's more from the building department. It's just our building department's buried as it is. We don't have staffing to go in and do some of that, but I don't know if Ted wants to elaborate a little bit more.
We will be inspecting the building for the building code. What this is more is for the construction management portion of it, to make sure the contractors are putting in the right material, the material they bid on, and to follow the contract. And we don't necessarily have the expertise in the building department to do that, nor do we have the time, because we just have the one inspector. But we will be inspecting the building as it relates to the construction.
Thank you.
Okay, so we will take and if I'm wrong and anybody wants a specific item pulled from this, but just judging from, the tenor of council's comments, we will take items 2G, 3A, 3B, 4A, 4B, 4I, 4K, and 4N together. Does anybody have any issues with that?
Well, the only question is whether or not for the drone one, when we approve it, are we approving it as written or are we approving it as amended? We never, that's my question.
So you ought to exclude that one.
I
Yeah,
think
so
that
one
one
is
ought to be
excluded.
handled as a separate motion.
That one is excluded as well. So
Okay.
we are taking
Everything but.
So we are taking items 3C and 4A separate.
Gotcha. All
Yeah.
right. So moved.
Move second.
Items 3C. We'll do that one first.
I'd like to move to approve item 3C, but with a 2-year implementation time limit, and that it be reconsidered after 2 years as to whether or not we want to continue.
Second.
Okay.
Oh, you have comments or no?
No, I'm
Okay.
fine.
Okay. Next item is 4A. We have a proposal to extend the ceiling to 500 feet from 100 feet and to extend the length from 100 feet to 500 feet.
Exactly, yes.
Okay, just want to make sure I got that one.
So
Okay.
I'd like to make the motion to approve
Okay.
4A,
So-
to make the amendments to the distances.
Okay.
We have some discussion.
So do we have any, does the council have any comments on?
You can get a second on the motion first. Get a second on that motion.
Do a second on that motion
And then have discussion.
And then have the discussion, okay.
Second.
Okay, so then we're not voting now, we're just, okay. Okay, I was under the impression that once you got the second thing, you had to go immediately to the vote, but that's not the case.
You will have a motion and then a second, just to make sure that you have a seconded motion to discuss.
Oh.
Now you have that, now you can discuss and then vote.
Okay,
So
I
we're-
see what you're saying.
Yeah, okay.
I see what you're saying, okay. So, okay,
I don't have that in front of me. The current language says that they cannot fly an unmanned aircraft within, I thought it was 150 feet.
No, it's 100.
100 feet, does that mean vertically and horizontally?
it means 100 feet vertically and then an
Right.
additional 100 feet horizontally.
Yeah, it says, "No person shall operate any model aircraft or drone within the city of Ripon above or within 100 feet of any organized event, including but not limited to sporting events, festivals, fairs, or otherwise."
That is applicable, just so we know, for special events. And that we have a special carve-out for special events because of the number of people that are typically there. This doesn't mean guys standing out in the park, and there's 4 guys out there flying their drones, that they have to be 100 feet apart and 100 feet high limit.
Right.
We're talking about special events like Amma Blossom Festival and that kind
We're talking about sporting events,
Soccer games.
those types of,
baseball
would
games.
those
Right,
fall under special
right.
events?
Well, I think that's the language out of the ordinance.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're talking about the flying of the
Unmanned
craft, not where the operators are standing, because we had that discussion at the last meeting.
Right. Right. We're talking about the actual craft where it's at in relation to the event.
Fine. I, personally, I don't think they ought to be flying over them, period. I don't care how high they are, but I'd rather have them 500 feet away than 100 feet away.
I agree, but hopefully the 500 feet will stop them from harassing these type of events.
All right.
Oh, okay, okay. So now do we have, so the first one was a motion to discuss. This next one will be a
No, the motion is to approve it
The
with
motion is to
500
approve the
feet.
changes.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
So I have a question, just to make sure I'm clear. So when we say organized event, that means permitted event?
I don't have the language in front of me, unfortunately.
Yeah, mine's not up and running. Mine's
I can't get
been
mine
tried to
up to
update
date.
for the last hour and a half. Jesus.
Yeah, any organized event. We have a definition for organized activities in our parks ordinance, so I imagine that would probably be where it is. It doesn't necessarily mean an event that has a permit to be an organized event. It's a team practicing, whenever you have people congregating for an event that's been prearranged and not just sort of some guys getting together to throw the frisbee around, but it's an organized event that is sanctioned by the city in some fashion.
Sanctioned by the city.
In some fashion, yeah.
Okay.
So if it's just a bunch of ladies who go out to decide to have a softball game and they're out there playing softball and somebody decides to fly over, this would not apply to that?
Well, again, we have to go back to our parks ordinance, and that's the only place where we have a definition of organized activity. And admittedly, there is a gray area there.
Okay.
It's not capable of being defined 100% of the way. But we would interpret it typically to mean, a league baseball game, obviously the various festivals and Main Street days and those types of things that are going on.
So
that's what we're really trying to get.
It's a
We're not trying
schedule
to
thing rather than a pickup thing.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
For clarification, Mr. Mayor and the City Council, that is correct. The height above or away from is only over special events or organized activities. A pickup game at a park or it does not include that. We have another section that pertains to the dangerous, negligent, or careless operation, which if it interfered with that activity, that's what the section we would use.
Right.
But that takes a complaint from the people that are participating in the activity.
And the ceiling for that one isn't necessarily defined. It's more of what's considered a nuisance to the people who are engaging in the event.
Right. There's no ceiling or height on that.
Okay. So I think we got everything squared away? Okay. I think we're good. So we have a motion on the floor and we have a second.
I'll make the motion to approve.
You already
Okay.
made, yeah, no, you're good. Yeah. Okay, and we are done with the consent calendar. We will move to a public hearing, item 5A. Mr. Zeidevart.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, fellow council members. Actually, I'd like to introduce John Anderson Consulting here tonight. They're going to take care of this item. This is dealing with the requirements of SB 5 and the 200-year floodplain. So I'll let them take over from there.
Anderson Land Use Planning. Our business address is 139 South Stockton Avenue here in Ripon. We're pleased to present this to you tonight. David Niskanen, my associate planner working with me, will actually be giving the PowerPoint. This is one of those situations where it's an unfunded state mandate. It's dealing specifically with 200-year flood as assigned by the state legislature back in 2007. I can tell you that there are a number of jurisdictions, including Manteca and Lathrop, that have spent literally millions of dollars in trying to map and determine what impact this may have on their city's future growth. It is a very significant issue in their eyes. Less significant for those cities along the Stanislaus River corridor, including Ripon, Riverbank, and Oakdale. We had the chance to do some work also with Riverbank and Oakdale. Tried to tailor that with Ripon. The impacts, or potential impacts with the 200-year flood were a little bit more significant, or could have been more significant here in Ripon. Your council, based on staff's direction, chose to physically map the 200-year flood area. That's been done. It's part of this effort. The state mandate basically comes in two parts. One is that you need to modify your general plan safety element, and the other is to modify your ordinances that are affected to specifically reference and to reflect the 200-year flood. So David will go over a little more details in that respect. Suffice it to say, it has been mapped. It's pretty consistent with, I think, where you would believe it should be, at least on the west side of town. On the east side of town, it's a little bit different. And the maps in the staff report will reflect that. After having said that, I'll just going to turn it over to David, and David will go through his PowerPoint presentation.
Thank you, John, for the introduction. As discussed, in summary, this project involves a general plan amendment and a zoning text amendment related to the requirements of Senate Bill 5 and the associated legislation related to the provision of 200-year floodplain protection. Just to give you a little bit of background, Senate Bill 5 was adopted in 2007, became effective in 2008, and it was really a direct response to the devastation of Hurricane Katrina. It requires urban and urbanizing areas to have a 200-year flood protection no later than 2025. and to incorporate SB 5 requirements into the city's general plan and municipal code. In response, as John discussed, the city funded a contract with Peterson Brewstad Incorporated. That's the same firm that mapped the Manteca and Lathrop area 200-year floodplain map. The analysis provided 200-year water surface profiles of the Stanislaus River, and more importantly, the mapping of the 200-year floodplain area and depth for the city of Ripon and the greater general area. And the 200-year flooding is characterized as having a greater than a 3-foot flood depth. And the first map of western Ripon is on this slide. And as you can see, the 200-year floodplain, if we looked at the 10 areas, orange and red, really follow the Stanislaus River and kind of tributary areas along the river. And then the eastern side, again, follows the Stanislaus River and then ventures north with a 3-foot depth, kind of north of the golf course and the outside of the city's sphere of influence and along River Road. The general plan amendment includes, among other things, the data and analysis from a document called the Central Valley Flood Protection Plan that was adopted by the Central Valley Flood Protection Board in 2012, and that's what really started this requirement for cities to amend their general plan and zoning ordinance with a time constraint. It also includes locations of state plan of flood control facilities. These levees are primarily located on the San Joaquin River, along the San Joaquin River, and up a little bit towards the Stanislaus River as well. It includes a location of flood hazard zones. That's the 100-year, the 200-year now that we have it mapped, and the 500-year floodplain. The maps in the general plan were from 2006, and the maps that are included in this general plan amendment are essentially updated firm flood insurance rate maps. It also includes locations or designated floodways, levee protection zones, awareness floodplain mapping, as well as new policies related to SB 5, including the requirement for a zoning text amendment in response to SB 5. That text amendment includes a new chapter called titled 200-Year Floodplain Protection in the Title 16 Development Code, and requires new development located within a flood hazard zone to make state-mandated findings related to flood protection as part of the land use decision prior to approval. And new development, as defined by the state, as defined by this government code, is a development agreement, a tentative subdivision or parcel map, a discretionary permit or other discretionary permit entitlement that would result in the construction of a new building, or construction that would result in the increase in allowed occupancy for an existing building, or a ministerial permit that would result in the construction of a new residence. The second area that we amended in the municipal code is in Chapter 801, that's the flood damage prevention section, in Chapter 1696, major subdivision, and Chapter 16100, minor subdivisions. The purpose of amending these areas is to provide proper cross-referencing to the new requirements in Chapter 1610. So it provides consistency and everything like that. For this project, it's exempt under the CEQA Section 15061, provided that this project will not have a significant effect on the environment, because all future requests for discretionary approvals will have to go through their own CEQA analysis, as well as be consistent with the general plan and the city's municipal code. The Planning Commission reviewed this project on July 18, 2016, and with a 4-0 vote, the Planning Commission adopted Resolution 1604, recommending the City Council adopt the proposed resolution and ordinance. And that is what we recommend as staff to you today, is to move forward with the Planning Commission recommendation to adopt the draft City Council resolution, as well as the draft City Council ordinance amending the general plan and the city's municipal code related to SB 5. And John and I are here to answer any questions that you may have, as well as Ken is here to answer any questions, you or the public, because this is a public hearing.
Does the council have any questions? Vice Mayor Euchre, you're first up.
My only question would be, will this affect flood rates? Could it or not?
No, the flood insurance rate maps are it's a federal program. These 200-year floodplain, these requirements that we're discussing now is a state mandated, so they will not affect any flood insurance rates.
Thank you.
Councilmember Stusha.
Yeah, just a quick question. This has been going on for a long time, but the question I have, you said the Planning Commission approved it 4-0. Did they have a choice?
Well,
I'm being serious. I'm not being
yeah,
sarcastic.
no,
We
that's
have
a
to
great
adopt it,
question.
right?
Yeah, that's a great question. It is, as John said, it's a state mandated, unfunded requirement, and the amendments to the municipal code are directly related to that, as well as the general plan amendment too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's mandated.
Yeah.
Yeah. The word in our house was always voluntold what was going to happen. Yes. Councilman Zuber.
I just want to make sure, when I was reading this, there was one part that I got confused. 16.100 references a chapter in the general plan, and 16.10 is in the development plan? Because when I was reading it, they kept going back and forth, and I couldn't tell if it was a typographical error or if I didn't know where I was going.
It should be referencing back and forth to each other in the development code.
That's
the
correct.
municipal code.
Both in the development code?
Yeah. The chapter 1610 is the 200-year floodplain protection chapter, and the other amendments in the code reference that chapter.
And where's 16.100?
That might have been a typographical error.
16100 is the development code. That one deals with major subdivisions, so like a subdivision of more than 4 lots. And then 1696 is in the development code, and that deals with parcel maps. Both of those refer back to the new chapter 1610, which is dealing with the 200-year floodplain. So any
I should
subdivision.
have asked you that about 4 days ago. It makes sense now, because when I was reading it, I got lost because the numbers were so similar that I didn't know if they were all going to the same place or 2 different places.
You have two types of subdivision of land. You have either a major subdivision or a minor. A minor is 4 parcels or less. A major is 4 parcels or more.
Okay.
Then both of those refer back to the new chapter 1610, which is the 200-year floodplain requirements.
Got it. Thank you.
What if it's only 4 parcels?
It's a parcel map. It's a minor subdivision.
Okay, so it's 4 and under, and then
Correct.
5 and over. Okay.
Correct.
Okay. All right, Councilman Winchell.
I guess you'd say that this is really a very minimal impact to Ripon as far as if we did have a 200-year flood, we don't have a whole lot of ground to cover, do we?
No, that's pretty correct. If you look at our general plan, actually within city limits, nothing at all. But if you go outside of city limits into our sphere of influence, pretty much all the land that we have zoned for any residential is outside the 200-year floodplain, with the exception of one parcel located on the eastern part of town. There's a small little parcel over there, maybe 5 to 10 acres, that would be in the 200-year floodplain. So if it ever develops, would have to meet all the requirements of building up and out of that, and show satisfactorily that they're out of the 200-year floodplain.
Thank you.
As this is a public hearing, I will open up the. Oh, you can go ahead and take a seat. Thank you. Yeah. As this is a public hearing, I will open it up to the public for any comments. Seeing none, I will go ahead and close the public comment section of the public hearing, and I will bring it back to the council.
I'll make a motion to accept.
Second.
Moving on to item 6A. Mr. Warner, Mr. Zeidevart, Mr. Terpstra. Is this Mr. Peace? We got to call him Mr. Peace more often.
Speak up at once.
Yeah,
I could nominate Tricia, but I don't think she'd be ready for this one.
Yeah, what this is just a resolution for the council to elect the city engineer / city administrator to authorize all agreements relating to the River Road, Fulton Avenue ATP project that we currently have.
Okay. Does the council have any comments, suggestions, thoughts? Councilman Zuber.
I'll move to adopt the resolution.
Second. Race ticket. Moving on to item 6B. Mr. Peace, are we at you again?
Yeah, this is a similar resolution which authorizes the city administrator to execute all agreements for our CNG solid waste collection vehicle that we'll be purchasing with CMAQ funds and some matching funds from the city as well.
So move.
I got one question.
Okay, well, now it's open for questions.
This is separate from the trucks that are going to be replaced because of the fire, correct?
Correct.
So in other words, we'll have 3 CNG trucks when this is all done. Okay.
Do we have a motion on the floor?
Yeah.
I had a motion, yeah.
Wait, so we had a motion, and then we had a second, and then wait,
And then he
Councilman
talked.
Euchre, did you have any comments?
Second.
Okay, so we've got a motion and a second.
We had a motion and a second before we asked this question.
6C.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll take this one. Fellow council members, this is a resolution here in front of you tonight with the final draft of the landscape design guidelines that we've been working on for quite some time now. We did bring it in front of City Council a while back. It was probably about 95% complete. There was a couple items in there that were added, such as adding weed block and such below dry creeks and stuff to keep weeds down. Also some references to street trees and what type of street trees should be planted with certain right-of-ways, certain street widths we have here in town. So other than that, I won't go into too much detail, but I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Okay. Does the council have any comments or suggestions? Councilman Zuber.
So once these are adopted, this is what we're going to tell residential developers, or have told a couple, and will tell all future residential developers that this is the standard we expect to have implemented in the front yards of the houses that are built.
Correct. They will be given these guidelines to follow, and then they do have to submit plans for the houses so that we can ensure compliance with this plan.
All right. Thank you.
Does any other member of the council have any comments, suggestions, thoughts? Seeing none, do we have a motion on the floor?
I'll move to adopt the resolution.
Second.
Moving on to item 7A, the utility joint trench and construction requirements. Ms. Ludovici. I did say your last name correct, right? Thank you.
Mayor Parks and council members, thank you for the opportunity to address you tonight on this ordinance. My name is Lisa Ludovici. I'm Director of Government Affairs for Charter Communications. We did prepare an informational presentation for you tonight, but we were not permitted to share that, so there are copies of the report at your desk. I'd like to start by saying that Charter's network in Ripon delivers state-of-the-art broadband services, including video, internet, and phone to residences and businesses. Some of our more notable customers are Ripon Unified School District and City Hall. There are some areas like the Cornerstone development where we are the only phone provider. Those families count on us for their connection to 911 services. Charter is also a community partner. We provide complimentary video to schools and libraries in Ripon, and a portion of our revenue goes to the city in the form of franchise fees. Last year in 2015, the city received $80,000 for their general fund from Charter. In other words, when Charter grows and our subscribers are happy, the city prospers as well. The prior local franchise that Charter had in Ripon required our systems to be built underground. This led to chronic outages and service problems due to water damage to electrical components, particularly our amplifiers. In comparison to other nearby communities, amplifier-related outages in Ripon are nearly double. In the presentation on page 5, you can see the breakout. But essentially, over a 4-year period, the city of Riverbank experienced 24 outages, Salida 20, Hillmar 23, and Ripon 44. Those 44 outages you might look at and say, that's not so bad over 4 years. However, the number of Ripon residents who were impacted is over 5,000. At Charter, our customers come first. We have industry-leading 1-hour service windows, service appointment availability on nights and weekends, including Sundays, and we monitor our network 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. When there is a customer outage, our repair policy is to begin working immediately upon notification and to resolve that outage within 2 hours of notification. The ordinance in its current form does not adequately protect against future outages, nor does it support Charter's policy of resolving outages as quickly as possible. We know that you want the best for the city of Ripon, and we want that too. But I think if you ask residents or businesses what that is, they will say it's high quality, reliable, and safe service. On July 12th, Charter suggested several changes to the proposed code amendment that would offer compromises to both the city and Charter subscribers. And those changes may be found on page 6, beginning on page 6 of this presentation. I know that a lot has been said about, why is Charter flying in at the last minute asking for more time? The issue that we're having is we do not get notice about this item being on the agenda until we receive Ms. Raymond's monthly notification of the posting of the agenda. This has been an 8-month process that we've been talking about this ordinance. We had one phone call with Mr. Terpstra and Mr. Werner. That was on June 10th. On that call, we were told that they would put together a red line and present that to us, and that we would have a chance to review that before it were brought back to City Council. We did not receive any notice. We did not receive an advance copy of that. Again, we found out July 7th, I believe, late Thursday afternoon, that it was posted to the agenda. We attempted to respond by submitting some changes. And once again, we had to say we can't be there for the meeting. Charter is a large company, the second largest cable operator in the country. We need a little more time than 2 or 3 days to respond. So if you have a moment, I'd just like to look at some of the changes that we've requested. We did offer as compromise to the city to put taps underground, to put service laterals underground. The amplifiers must remain above ground. Otherwise, those are very delicate electrical components. They're very sensitive to water. We'd like for existing construction for new construction for those to be able to be above ground. We are happy to mitigate for adverse visual impacts. That's not an easy process. It's not a cheap process, but we will do that because we, value our relationship with the city of Ripon, and we understand that you want the city to look its best. For existing construction, if there's a chronic history of repeated failure, we need to have the opportunity to bring that amplifier above ground. We can't wait for a 60-day encroachment permit. Those customers need their 911 service. They need their internet service right away. We want to do it within 2 hours. We also ask that in the appeals and scope of review, the Charter's constitutionally guaranteed due process rights are preserved. If we are appealing an encroachment permit denial, we'd like to have the opportunity to present that to the council and to, share with you our evidence and our viewpoint. We also feel that the imposition of penalties is excessive. We don't see a nexus there between what the true regulatory costs are. So we ask that the council accept our suggested changes. To the extent that there are some questions or concerns, we would be happy to have a discussion about those, but we'd like to have a discussion and not just have these, new iterations be introduced without giving us an opportunity to speak.
Perfect. Thank you, Lisa. You want to ask a question? Okay.
The amplifiers, does each residence have an amplifier, or is it a block, or is it, can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, so typically an amplifier serves eight homes, but if it's part of a cascade, it can serve as many as 500. So the impact can be up to 500 homes.
And then I know staff would like to.
Only when the public comment period is over.
When the public comment.
Sure.
Okay. So.
I've got a comment.
Yeah. Okay. Councilmember Stusha.
Question, but I want to make some comments. You do have good internet service, I got to tell you, and your phone service. I like it. So regardless of what I do here, I do like the service.
Okay, thank you.
And I noticed you only pay just $80,000 in fees to the city. Is that it? You don't have to answer that. That was just funny. Okay, so here's a question I have.
It's based on our revenue, based on how many subscribers we have.
I'm kidding.
Okay.
So here's a question I have.
Just saying, we'd like to partner.
That's an honest question. And I don't mean to be sarcastic, but it's going to sound like that, okay?
That's all right.
We want certain aesthetics for the city of Ripon. We can put people on the moon, but we can't put stuff underground to keep it from getting wet. And that's an honest question.
I understand. The nature of our electronics are such that we can't seal them underground. They get too hot, they overheat. When we place them underground and allow for air to breathe around them, we get water runoff. So that's the dilemma that we're faced with.
So every city has these things above ground.
Every city has them above ground. Now we can mitigate. We can try to mitigate. We can, where we place them, we can put landscaping, we can, get something decorative to cover them. We're willing to work with the city on that.
Does the type of soil make a difference, or how you put rock around it to drain it better or anything like that? I mean, obviously you must have tried 1,000 different things.
Yeah. I mean, we've tried numerous things. We dig them deeper. What's underneath it. Digging them deeper is really, the biggest way that you can try to mitigate for this. But eventually the water builds up. And if there's chronic and repeated failure, our customers are losing out, really. This is about our customers.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I do. I just want to make sure that I'm understanding you correctly. So it's because of water damage, and then also you said because of the elements too, correct? The heat from undergrounding them.
Well, if we had to seal those vaults underground so that water wouldn't get into them, then we would have a problem with overheating.
Okay, so
right.
If you put them underground, you have to seal them, and then you have a problem with overheating.
Right.
So then how do you take care of that problem when they're above ground and they're fully encased? This year is a little bit of an aberration when for a 3 and 4 week stretch out here in the Central Valley, it's over 100 every day. And you saying that those are sensitive pieces of equipment. What's different about those two scenarios, that above ground it can withstand it, but below ground it can't withstand the heat?
Because above ground we can build in air vents that prevent it from overheating. And if it's above ground, even though there may be rain or there may be sprinklers that hit it, it's not, submerged in water. And that's really the problem. Does that make sense?
So if you sink it below ground, you can't build in a drainage system to have water funnel out then?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah. There's no way to do that.
Does the council have any other thoughts, comments?
Well, I have some, but
I guess the only comment I can talk about is at my office. A few years back, I had a lot of problems with what you're saying with the comments, because it was underground, and especially when it rained a lot, we had huge problems. And I will say that Charter did everything they could do to keep my service up. I don't have that problem at my house, but for whatever reason now, it's still basically the same. You guys must have done something, and my service has never been, affected. And so I don't know if you guys came in and changed something there or not, but I get it. But there's that other side is. I think we've had some people complain because whatever you want to call them, the
pedestals.
They're in their driveway and it's blocking their parking, and to me that would be an issue where there's got to be somewhere where you could place those in a less cumbersome
You
place.
could put them in a specific spot to where it's not impeding somebody getting in and out of their driveway and things like that. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, right.
Right, and we'd be happy to work with people on a case-by-case basis and figure out what do we do for that particular situation. We just need an address and a contact.
So, on those amplifiers, are you putting those in before you got a customer? Or you would have to get called by a customer and then you might have to come out and put it in?
So in areas where there's new construction, like Cornerstone, obviously we put them in. We know people are going to be buying those homes, and we're going to be ready to serve them. Particularly, when it comes to phone, Frontier is not out there. Frontier is not doing new construction. We're the only phone provider. Yes. So when it comes to new construction, yes, we're going to build them. When it comes to existing construction, and that's part of why we made the distinction in our suggestion with the code, that is going to be the way it is. When those start to fail, then we would try to bring them above ground at that point. But we're not going to, we're going to leave them where they are. If they start to fail, then we would seek to bring them above ground. So those, in the areas where we're already built out, it's not going to be a problem of new construction. It's going to be, if there's repeated failure, at that time, we will seek to bring those above ground.
Okay, so you will seek to do it. You won't just do it.
Right. And
okay, because you had said that you were just going to above ground them, and I'm like, wait a second. So
this is one of the
I just want to make sure that
if you adopt the ordinance as they're recommending,
we won't have that oversight.
Told, I don't care what she says. That ordinance says they can come in here and do it first, and then talk to us later.
Well, and we are happy to discuss a process around that. The problem is there was no discussion. It was just, no, you must get an encroachment permit. Here you go, council, pass this. Charter did not have a voice in that. And we said in our comments that we sent to the city on July 12th, we're happy to have a conversation about how this process takes place. But waiting 60 days for an encroachment permit, which is how it is now, that means that family is going to be without service until we get an encroachment permit 60 days down the road. We just think there's got to be some middle ground. We're happy to talk about that. We don't want to, we understand and we want to work with the city. And we will be happy to discuss that process.
Councilman Winchell?
I understand that there's certain equipment that does have to be above ground. There's some pretty large units out there that they get hot, and I can understand that. But I've noticed that not only Charter, but there's other utilities have started to pop their stuff above ground. So you'll see examples in a little bit of why we have such rigid concerns about, we understand what you're promising us, but I think you'll see, and I'd like you to address which of these units belong to Charter when they pop up, and mitigating this would be great, but I think so much stuff has been put above ground. Are you going to? Okay. Yeah. Now, this is an example of a large piece of equipment, which I don't know who owns it or what utility, but I can understand why maybe something like that would have to be above ground. But if you look down the picture, you'll see there's a bullet there, and then you'll see the property. After that, there's another bullet there. And if we could really get a close-up, you would see the stuff all the way up and down the streets. And go ahead to the next one, Dan. This one, is this one of yours here?
No.
Okay. Well, whoever put that in, that's dead center in their front yard. And, you know,
It's a nice bench.
yeah, you know, I'd like to see you mitigate that, I guess maybe a bush. Okay, one more, please, Dan. Okay, this is the worst one. We've got 2 pieces of property, and we have 3 sitting up right here, and then we have 2 in the ground. Now, are those yours in the ground?
No.
I
Those are water
cannot
meters,
tell.
I
It looks
guess.
like it's water.
Okay. Well, this is in Gustine right here. So, which one of those is Charters?
I believe the green one is ours.
Which green one?
The green one in the middle or the green one off to the left?
Okay.
the-
Do you know
the
who the
sidewalk
others
one.
belong to?
No, but, you know, when we began this conversation with staff.
The only reason
back in-
I want to show you that is if we approve what you want to change here, you know, we're going to have these things popping up all over because we've just set a precedence. So that's
Well,
one of my
as you-
concerns.
Yeah, I mean, as you can see, it's already happening. But, you know, when we began this conversation, we shared with staff some photos that we had showing other utilities above ground. Phone, power. So, you know, our concern at that time was we were being treated unfairly. And, you know, in so much as there are other utilities that may need to be above ground, we want to be recognized as having that need ourselves. So it's not all us, and I can, you know, certainly understand, you know, why this may be of concern to you.
Yeah, I
It
look
is
at
something
it as a
that
can
maybe
of worms.
all utilities, you know, maybe there needs to be a utilities meeting to discuss this.
Thank you.
So I have a question.
Councilmember
So, I don't think this ordinance says charter on it. This is a utility ordinance, correct? Because you were saying you're being treated differently. I don't think that's what this does it?
Yeah, actually, this ordinance is specifically for phone and video providers.
I thought
Is
it
that right,
was
Mr.
for
Terpstra?
all utilities.
Yeah, this ordinance applies to utilities that provide telephone and/or cable television services, which is what the DIVCA law says you have to treat the same, which is what we've done. This ordinance, right, this ordinance has been supplied to Frontier, which it provides service that would be subject to the ordinance. We reached out to them for comment at the suggestion of Charter. We met with them, we've had discussions with them. They've confirmed they have no problem with the ordinance.
I will point out that Frontier is in the middle of an integration process with Verizon that has been rather messy. And so I can't speak for them. I don't know if
I'm not
that was a
expecting to speak for
distraction.
them.
Does that include internet service? Those two, right?
Frontier, yeah.
No, Frontier.
You're talking about what we're
Yeah,
considering now.
right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you
Our
already-
broadband service, it's one wire, and it's all light, and it brings all 3 products. So even though this ordinance is just for video service, it does impact phone, does impact our broadband service.
Does the council have any other questions? Okay. Seeing none, so thank you, Ms. Ludovici.
Thank you.
I will open it up to staff.
This is up for second reading and adoption. The version of the ordinance that is in your packet reflects changes that were made as a result of a series of conversations with Charter over several months. We've been working on this for more than 8 months with them and their attorneys based out of Washington, D.C. Their changes that, as I said, that are in the ordinance that are in front of you reflect a consensus that we reached at that time. We understand the additional changes that Charter is proposing, but we don't agree with them at a staff level, and that's why it's before you for second reading and adoption as is. I know Kevin has some additional information that he could share and some pictures of what we're talking about. Council can certainly ask for that if you want.
I think that would be good.
Dan, can you pull up
No.
the slideshow and go to
You can go ahead and ask.
7A?
Dan's pulling up, so you can ask a question.
I'm not gonna try to
Ludovici.
pronounce that. Would it really seriously take 60 days for them to, to do this process? Because, hey, I use Charter, and if my service was down for 60 days, I'd be out of business.
If they have an underground facility that fails, they can fix it and underground it again. They have lots and lots of these amplifiers throughout town that are undergrounded. If they fail, they can fix it underground. And then if it's a chronic problem, they can come back and ask us to put it above ground prospectively in the future. Doesn't mean they can't fix the outage. They can fix the outage. They just can't put it above ground until they go through the process. And staff has up to 60 days, not just a blanket 60 days, but up to 60 days. And as we see, I tried not to interrupt the speaker, so I just want to finish the answer.
Yes.
They have up to 60 days to request that permit. And we have up to 60 days to act on the permit. So it wouldn't necessarily take 60 days, and they're not prevented from fixing outages. That's not a problem.
Just to be clear of what we're
Can I ask one more question before we go on? I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but I want to be clear. I'm hearing there was one conversation, I'm hearing there were multiple conversations.
I was first contacted by their attorneys when we drafted the ordinance that we proposed to handle the DIVCA-related issues and to set up an encroachment permit process, which is specifically allowed under DIVCA. I spoke with their attorney, Mr. Gillespie, out of Washington, D.C., probably half a dozen times over a period of several months. We then had a meeting with Charter and their representatives here at Ripon at City Hall, went over some of the technical aspects of this, tried to make sure we were using the same terminology because there's different terms that apply to different pieces of equipment, then drafted an ordinance that dramatically scaled back what we had on the books. Then we had a conference call in June with their operations and legal staff, went through all of the changes in the ordinance, informed them that it would be on in July, and it was on in July, and that's the process we went through. So we've had a series of telephone conversations, dozens of emails back and forth, multiple iterations of the ordinance. I don't know what more we can do. We understand the points they're trying to make at a staff level, and we understand the changes they're proposing. We simply don't agree with them.
Okay.
And it's up for the council to decide, as a legislative matter, what you want to do.
I would like to have an opportunity to rebut that.
Do you mind if
This is not a public hearing.
Yeah, this is not a public hearing, so we'll let
the
staff.
public has had an opportunity to speak.
We'll let staff go through their presentation.
Well, one of the things I thought was important to point out, and I think Mark's pictures kind of did this, but talk about what facilities are we talking about. This is one of the amplifiers from the cable company, and that's what we refer to in the ordinance. The next slide, Dan. This is what we refer to as a tap. There's many of these taps around town. I think when we talked to Charter, they indicated that these can be easily placed underground. But if you go around town, these are in multiple locations. So that is a concern that we have, and they continue to pop up both on new development and old development. And just to kind of get a sense, we did go and visit a neighboring city that does obviously allow both the taps and the amplifiers to be above ground. And we did a comparison. Dan, can you go to the next slide too? On the left there is a neighboring city. You can see the taps throughout the street. You can see all the above ground boxes. By no means do I think this was the worst street in the city with the equipment. I think it was just a street that I happened to go down. And then on the right is a cornerstone. And you just see the aesthetic difference between the two of these. I think Tom's right. I think from a staff perspective, we understand the concerns from Charter. I think that as we go forward with these for new development, what we see is the need to put the amplifiers in locations that are not going to flood. So through a joint trench permit process, what we're doing now is requiring a little bit more detail to make sure that when they do underground the amplifiers, that they are in the high points, not the low points where they're going to flood. So I think that's one important change that we're implementing. The other thing is for existing construction, we agree with the outages, and there can be times when they do come in and request those to be to go above ground. By no means are we saying you can't make the repair underground, which they do all the time. These are underground now. They make these repairs all the time underground now. We're not saying hold off on that. They can still make those repairs. They don't have to wait 60 days to do that. But when they come into the encroachment permit, we want to make sure that it is an amplifier that is having these type of outages, and that those are not being installed in the middle of someone's driveway, in the front lawn, that they're being screened in some manner. So I think Tom's right. I think we do understand the concerns, and we've reflected that understanding in the ordinance you have before you tonight.
Kevin, so how do we go about monitoring which ones are having issues? Do they send us a report that says, hey, we had issues with 5, 6, 7? Or do they just kind of come in and say, look, we've had this issue with number 5 for a year now. It just isn't working. We need to fix it. How does that kind of process unfold?
Well, what we set out in the ordinance here is they would come in with the outage history and talk about, was it one outage in 10 years just because equipment is failing, or is it multiple outages every wet season? And those are the ones we would want to address. So we have laid out a process where they could come in and show us the outage history and then show us their plans to relocate that through the encroachment permit process.
Okay. Councilman Zuber.
As I read our ordinance, the latest version, and the proposal from Charter, there are 6 places where the two are different. So I want to take each one of those 6 and get some answers, and then we should be able to decide what we are or aren't going to do, because the rest of it's the same. Everybody seems to accept it. The first one, we propose, our ordinance as it's written now says amplifiers are going to go underground. Charter proposes that the ordinance say that the amplifiers go above ground. Correct? Yep. But later on, in a section that's not changed by either side, it says that Charter can come in, get an encroachment permit, and ask that those be put anywhere they want. Is that correct? Doesn't say we have to say yes, but we don't automatically have to say no either.
I believe that's for existing facilities that can come in and get an encroachment permit to bring this about.
Right. The second one is with the encroachment permit. The city says you get one before you do anything. Charter's proposal is they get to do what they want to do with no encroachment permit.
Correct.
Okay. It also says they might mitigate the appearance. Doesn't say they shall, but I am assuming that if they have to get an encroachment permit, if there's an issue of appearance, the city can say that's one of the issues that has to be addressed. Am I correct?
That's correct.
The next 4, I got to cite some numbers, so if you've got them, you might, because it's sections, it's where the things are different. The first one is 5.29.070, which is appeals. And the difference is one of the options that our ordinance has now is that the administrator's decision will come to the council and be affirmed with no hearing, no additional information, no nothing. And Charter wants that taken out and only wants the other 2 options there, which goes back to the city administrator or it comes to the council for a hearing. Correct? Correct. I guess one of my questions is, unless we put the item on the infamous consent calendar, if that affirmation action is asked of the council and it's an agenda item, we cannot tell the public they cannot address that issue, can we?
I'm not sure I followed the question.
Well,
what you're asking me is option A, affirming without a further hearing, the legal option.
Right.
Yes.
How do you do that?
Staff would report to the city council that this is the same appeal we've heard 6 times in a row, the same facts, the same law, the same everything, and we recommend that it be affirmed without further hearing. Courts do it all the time.
But unless
there could be a
I can only speak for me, but unless I've seen the thing for 6 times, I don't necessarily know whether I might agree with that decision or not.
That's right. You're one council member, and you can vote to say, I think it should go to the city administrator. I think we should have a hearing. But one of the options on your menu should be to affirm without a hearing, and the council.
Well,
can
that's
vote
your
on that.
opinion.
No, I'm saying the council can decide. The council may never use this option, but it needs to be there in case there are
The way that's written,
in case there are arbitrary.
you get to decide whether we're going to use that option because you do the agenda, not us.
No, see, here's how it would work. The appeal would come to the council. You can only affirm without a further hearing if you take action. This is a council action, not a staff action.
Well, the question is whether we even get to give the council that option.
No.
It is. Their opinion is no. Your opinion is yes. That option be there. Correct? I'm just trying to identify the differences right now.
What the section says is upon receiving a notice of appeal, the city council shall take one of these 3
Right.
actions. So your 3 actions are: 1, affirm and not have any further hearings, and don't even send it back to the city administrator, because as I said, it's a specious appeal. You've heard it 6 times in a row. So the council is taking an action. It's just affirming that decision without any further hearing. That's one of your menu options. Your second menu option is send it to the city administrator for a further hearing because you don't think he heard everything, or you think there's a basis for some discussion there at the city administrator level. And the third option is have a complete new hearing. Does that make sense?
I don't know if
But
it's a
all
complete
3 of
new
those-
hearing, but it would be a hearing here instead of in Mr. Warner's office.
It's a new hearing because we call it a de novo hearing. A de novo hearing is,
All right.
is a new hearing.
But the difference is option A.
Option A.
We want option A, they don't.
Correct.
Okay.
I want you to have option A because I want you to be able to affirm it without further proceedings.
I understand. Okay. 5.29.80 basically is sort of, if we're going to have a hearing, then it defines what we will and won't hear.
Yes, and this is consistent with how administrative bodies throughout the state, whether it's the Board of Cosmetology, the Board of Supervisors, the Superior Court, hearing bodies in general that are administrative hearing bodies, like you would be in this case, you'd be acting as an administrative hearing body to consider an appeal by charter or Frontier, whoever it is. They are limited by statute to the evidence that was in front of the initial hearing body. It's not fair for the second hearing body to consider evidence that wasn't considered by the initial hearing body. And so all we're doing is limiting the scope of the evidence that can be presented so that the council gets the same information that Kevin got. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
So if there was new information, they would have to go back to Kevin and then it could be presented to us.
Right.
Okay.
It's just to prevent, the reason courts do this and the reason the law is always set up this way is to prevent unnecessary appeals from getting to the hearing body and have most of the hearing issues resolved at the lower level.
Okay. 5.29090, the way our version is written, any changes that are going to be made have to come in for an encroachment permit. And charter would like to only come in here if it's going to possibly have an adverse visual effect.
Well, let me read it in full so we can make sure we're all talking about the same thing. This section deals with the requirement that charter give notification to people who live within 300 feet of the area of their impacted activities.
Right.
What charter is saying is they only want to give that notice when their rebuild or upgrade has the potential to result in adverse visual impacts.
And ours says, regardless of whether it's going to look good or bad, you're going to tell them.
We don't want charter to make the decision
Right.
whether it's going to have
No,
a
I
visual
understand.
impact or not, because their chances are they probably won't send out many notices.
Well, I won't read their mind, but the ordinance would allow them to do that.
Correct.
Okay. And then the last difference is in 5.29.110. And the main difference is if they violate the ordinance the first time, they're fined at one level. They violate it again, it goes up. They violate it again, it goes up again. Charter wants it to be the same no matter how many times they violate.
Well, I think their issue isn't so much whether they want to set a level fine each time as much as they think that we need to show there's a nexus between the amount of the penalty that we propose and the administrative cost of administering the ordinance. That's not true when you're dealing with a penalty provision. It's true when you're dealing with impact fees, as we'll talk about later tonight on other issues, that you have to show a nexus there between the amount of the charge and the amount of the burden that the government has. In this case, as you know from our code, we have violation provisions and penalty provisions in a lot of our code sections, and they're structured the same way with a lower level at first and a higher level based on repeated violations.
Similar to what we did with the water regulations.
Right. It's not so much a regulatory charge for someone's time as it is a deterrent, and that's the intent of the penalty sections. So it's been useful going through all of these, and I hope we've given you the information as to why staff has proposed the ordinance as we have, and certainly entertain any other questions that council has.
No, I have one comment. Initially, I don't have a problem with any of them except one. That idea of, you probably guessed, that idea of this hearing with no input, just kind of, I understand that by the time it's the 13th time, everybody wishes we weren't doing it. But for me, it bothers me when people can say that the city council is backing up the staff and not giving us a chance to say anything. And I don't care whether it's charter or a citizen or a business doing something in town. If we end up sitting here 3 or 4 times in a year, I will be the first, and I happen to be sitting here, I will be the first one to admit that I made a big mistake and want to go back in here and change this thing. But I have a problem with it being the initial position. That's just me.
And I think we've probably not communicated that as clearly as we could. When you get the notice of appeal from the applicant, whether it's charter or anybody else, they will state the reasons for their appeal. The ordinance as we've drafted it says that you now have 3 options. You can, based on what you see from that appeal and their reasons, you can say, I accept this or I don't accept it. Okay, you can affirm the action of the city administrator based on the face of the appeal. You say, I don't need to consider any more evidence. I don't need to have a full hearing. Based on this, I affirm the decision of the city administrator. It doesn't mean that you don't have a hearing. It doesn't mean that you don't have a discussion amongst yourselves. It's on your agenda for action. And one of the actions is to affirm Kevin's decision.
Will it state
without
all
having
3
a further
options?
hearing. And those are they're all listed here.
Okay.
So that's one of your options, is to affirm Kevin's decision and not have any further hearings. The other thing you can do is say, Kevin, I'm not sure you considered everything, or maybe charter has additional evidence to submit. I send it back to Kevin. That's option B. And option C is to say, I think the proceedings have reached an impasse. I want to have a full hearing, a completely new hearing on everything, and consider all the evidence and all the testimony that Kevin had at his disposal at that time. So we would have a full new hearing on the matter. So option A doesn't mean you don't even look at anything. You just say, you lose, too bad. It means you look at the appeal and you say, from the statement of the appeal, I know enough to make a decision today. Does that make sense?
It does, and the only question I have, which I asked before, and as I was asking it, I knew I wasn't doing it right. But since that item would appear on the agenda as an action item, probably not under the consent agenda,
right,
and somebody in the audience raises their hand and says, hey, I'd like to address you about that. Pro, con, or indifferent. If it was any other action item, probably the mayor would say, fine, get up there and tell us your name and your address, and you got whatever. Would that still apply to this?
There's no reason it couldn't. There's no reason it wouldn't.
Okay, then I have all the answers I need. Thank you.
Does the council have any other comments, thoughts, suggestions? Public hearing is closed.
So you want a motion? I'll give you a motion.
Yeah.
And this is, are we waiving the second reading and adopting,
you just
or are we, what?
You just make a motion to adopt. Yeah.
I'll move that I've heard enough tonight. I understand Charter's position, but I think their concerns can be mitigated within this ordinance. And I think that we need to maintain control over this situation. And if they think they're being unduly punished by the city administration, we're here the second Tuesday of every month, and they can come in here and make their case, and we'll decide what we're going to do about it. I don't think that will happen. I also hope that the city staff will also act in the best interests of the citizens, and if the professional people responsible for getting internet to Mr. Euchre's office say that if we don't get this thing put above ground, Mr. Euchre's not going to be able to be served, that we listen to that and respect it. Having said that, I will move that we adopt the ordinance.
Second. But before we do that, I have a comment. I would agree with Mr. Euchre, and especially considering the effort that we're putting towards economic development and all the time and effort and energy that we're devoting towards it. One of the key driving forces, and it's been this way since before I was born, was technology development and making sure that the businesses that we bring in, that they have access to fast, reliable internet. And it's only going to get faster and faster. And in order to do that, you are going to have more sensitive material to get it done. Now, hopefully that's not always the case, but for the foreseeable future, it looks like it is. So when we do different developments going forward, and I'm primarily concerned with commercial, that we make sure that we take that into consideration and that we do everything we can to enable those businesses to succeed. That's my just big caveat to this whole thing. I think that local control is good, especially when it comes to this and controlling how everything is done. But we need to make sure that we take that consideration going into the future, and so that way we don't just get stuck on autopilot, because that will be one of the things that we're going to have to look at if we want to succeed economically in this town, is making sure that the businesses, like Vice Mayor Euchre, have what they need to succeed. All right, so that's my comments. Anybody else? Do we have a motion on the floor?
Yep, I move that we adopt it.
We had a motion on the floor. We had a second. All right, moving on. Item. Oh, you're in there. Okay. 8A. That is Goodwin Consulting.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. My name is Victor Urzik. I'm with Goodwin Consulting Group. Several weeks back, we presented at a workshop a fee comparison survey between the city's fees and the fees of 6 local cities in the area. And as you recall, the results of that survey showed that the city's fees, while not the highest of the cities surveyed, were in the upper ranges. And so as a result, I'm here today to present a revised fee scenario based on the recommended changes from that workshop. And just to recap some of those recommendations, what we've done is eliminated the traffic signal fee and incorporated the traffic signals into the Transportation Capital Improvement Program. And so now we've got just the one transportation fee. Regarding funding from other sources on regulated transportation facilities such as interchanges and Olive Expressway, the city took a look at the costs and determined what is a reasonable amount of additional revenues that they can expect possibly from such sources as federal funds, state funds, and regional funds. So those have been incorporated. For the Parks and Rec fee, the city was the only city of those surveyed that actually levied a fee on non-residential development. So what we've done is we've reallocated the Park and Rec facilities to just residential development. And then we've also expanded on the number of fee categories for industrial, where originally we had one general industrial category. Now we have 3, including light industrial, heavy industrial, and warehouse. And then lastly, regarding the library and city hall fund balances, the situation there is we looked at that whole issue. What happened was the city hall and the library were funded up front before fee revenues were sufficient to fund that fully, and so you have some city debt outstanding there. We looked at that to see if the existing fees, if you look at the revenues over time, whether that negative balance can be fully paid, and we found that it can, and this includes any interest on those funds. And so the fees as they currently are sufficient to, at some point, fully remove that negative balance. Of course, it's going to depend on development and how quickly that occurs. And so here are the results of those changes that we made to the fee program. We've got a lot of numbers here, so I want to just direct your attention to the total fee line at the bottom. For single family, we've got the existing fee, total fee at $41,324. With the proposed changes, the fee would be $41,091. That's about 0.6% less. Same with multifamily, the fees stayed relatively close. For commercial, the fee went down from $375 per land square foot to $351. That's a reduction of about 8%. For office, went from $351 to $2.88. That's about an 18% decrease. For light industrial, went from $3.05 to $2.77. That's a 9% decrease. For heavy industrial, there was approximately a 7% increase in the fee, and for warehouse, approximately a 5% increase. And as far as the transportation CIP, what had occurred here, just to summarize the changes, again, the traffic signalization fee was eliminated, and the total costs of the traffic signal improvements and intersection improvements there were included in the transportation CIP. So the total CIP increased by approximately $40 million. Offsetting this was the assumption of outside funding for the regional facilities. So that included 2nd Street interchange, the Olive interchange, the Olive Expressway, and also the remaining debt on Jack Tone. So that's a total of $66.7 million. So that was removed from the capital improvement program. And then 2 additional improvements were added. That's South Stockton Avenue and intersection controls around Jack Tone and Santos intersection, totaling $12.8 million. So that was included into the CIP. So all told, there was a net decrease of about $13.5 million when you factor those changes. And this is a map that identifies where those improvements will occur. The dots are the intersection improvements, and then we've got the blue sections are the additions, and then we've got the red identifying lines are the outside funding. I'm sorry?
Can we ask questions, or do you want us to wait?
Absolutely.
Do those red dots mean all those intersections are going to end up with signals someday? Is that what they mean? Or what do they mean by intersection improvements?
Potentially, we did a worst-case scenario of the intersection costs for a 4-way signal light. And so that's the price that we assign to each intersection. Obviously, that's not going to be the case.
Excuse me, but man.
But in the smaller intersections, that could also account for pavers if you decide to put pavers in, or roundabouts, or whatever you'd like.
I have one other question. On the preceding slide, or the succeeding, this one, it says that Olive Avenue is outside funding, but we have intersections in there with funding. Which is it?
Yeah, the intersections have not been removed yet, and those will be removed on the next revision.
Will that have any effect on the number? Or are they already gone as
slightly.
far as the numbers?
No, it will have effect on the number, but they'll go down, obviously.
That's 3 out of 1 million, but okay. Thank you.
Okay, and for the Parks and Rec fee, what this slide shows is your current fee. And as you can see, for non-residential, the fee is 20 cents per land square foot for commercial and office, and 8 cents for light, heavy, and warehouse. Under the revised fee, where we've allocated everything to residential development, the fee goes up very slightly, less than 1% actually in doing this. So not a big impact. Okay, and then for the fee comparison, now what we're doing here is we're comparing the proposed fees to the fees of 6 cities in the local area. And we've chosen updated sample projects. So for the retail fee comparison, the site acreage is 2 acres. The building square footage is 23,500 square feet. And so for the Ripon fees, and you'll notice under public facilities fees that the Parks and Rec fee is 0. And then also under the infrastructure section, the traffic signals are also 0. And in total for Ripon, for the proposed fees, are just under $407,000 for this development. Lathrop, the fees come in at approximately 31% less than Ripon's. For Manteca, it's 2% less. For Tracy, also 2% less. For Riverbank, their fees are about 10% higher than Ripon's. Modesto's are 4% higher than Ripon's. And Turlock's are 24% higher. And for a graphic representation of that, Ripon's fees are the 4th bar over. This is slightly better than in the original fee comparison that we did, where they were in the 5th position. So they've come down, and at least for retail, we're showing as being more competitive with the changes.
What was retail previously at?
What was it previously?
Yeah, before we did this.
It's on that chart.
Which one? The previous one?
No, this one. That was one of my questions. Where does retail fit on that chart? Because we don't have a retail column.
It would actually be the commercial fee.
Okay.
So we were previously at $5.61 per land foot.
Okay, $5.61. Okay, so we've come down almost $1.
Yeah, correct.
Okay, thank you.
For office, previously office was actually the worst category for Ripon. We were 7th out of the 7 cities that we looked at. We made some changes, particularly to the transportation cost allocation, where we reduced the trip generation for office. And so for this sample project, it's a 1-acre site with 10,890 square feet of building space on that. And so the total fee for Ripon comes to $181,953. For Lathrop, It's 40% less than Ripon. For Manteca, the fees are 8% higher. Tracy, these are 26% less than Ripon. Riverbank is 2% higher. Modesto is 1% higher. And Turlock is 3% lower than Ripon's fees.
Okay, I have a question. Doesn't Tracy Gateway have some additional fees that are on top of that, some sort of master fee that goes along with that project?
Not that we saw on, there could be, that we're not aware of, that may be paid through a development agreement, but per their published fee schedule, we didn't, I think we've got them all.
I think there is, and what I'm getting at is if you look at the allocated piece that may go to this, we may not be that far off if that was included.
That may be the case.
Right, just to add a little side note there, yeah, you'll see on the comparisons here, underneath each city is either an NA or a like for Lathrop, Mossdale Landing. So some of these areas that are chosen in different towns have different fee structures. So the ones that have NA underneath them is basically more of an apples-to-apples comparison, I think, between the communities. The other ones, like you said, they could have additional fees because they are under a specific plan. And also, we did update the comparisons here to get a little more real-world examples for Ripon. I think that was the last meeting. We talked about some of the scenarios and that we wanted them to kind of get them down to a Ripon size. So just for this example here, this office fee comparison is an actual site that we're developing here in town on the corner of Sun Valley Court and Main Street, Dr. Crumb's office right now. So this would be a real-world comparison for that.
Okay, graphically, again, Ripon comes up as the fourth column, and as I mentioned, in our prior survey, it had the highest fees actually for office, so it's come down quite a bit. For the light industrial category, we've got a 2-acre site with a 5,000 square foot building on the site. Here, Ripon's fees are approximately $271,000. Lathrop's fees are about 50% less. Manteca's fees are 37% less. Tracy's fees are 26% higher. Riverbank's are 69% less. Modesto's are 74% less, and Turlock's are 64% less. And part of the reason for Ripon's fees being much higher than the surrounding cities is because Ripon charges on a per land square basis, because this is a 2-acre site with only a 5,000 square foot building. That has a large impact because the other cities charge on a per building square foot basis. So that discrepancy there causes the large fluctuation in fees between communities.
So if you were to put a 15,000 square foot building on there,
they would probably be more in line.
Okay.
Well, that's
what I asked last time.
yeah. So yeah. I'm thinking of the marketing of it and how you can go about doing that and mitigating some of it, making sure that it's an apples to apples comparison. Because when you look at that, it's tough to swallow for some businesses. So, just kind of stream of conscious thought there.
So that's a good point. So can I ask a question?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so if you were to do a comparison of a 5,000 square foot building on a 1-acre parcel, we would look extremely competitive.
It would be more competitive, right?
More,
Mm-hmm.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So that's how we look at it then.
Well, yeah. So it'll just be from the marketing standpoint that we would just have to make sure that we, are putting together a scenario to where it highlights our
I have a question.
Councilman Zuber.
I am assuming that one of the problems with doing a per building square foot versus per land square foot is the potential that you could have a small building with high usage and you wouldn't cover it. But isn't that possible with a small building on a small piece of property too?
Right. I mean,
this is a guess. But my problem is when I went through and looked at these things, some of the places that these cities are saving money, I don't understand, are saving developers money. I don't understand. We're charging $35,000 for a building that for wastewater, and Tracy's charging $1,100 for the same building. Now, in theory, if you're going to build a building, the usage is going to be the same regardless. And when I looked at these, how these cities are doing that, I really would like to know how they're approaching this. Because if it's possible that they're having grant money or they get something that develops 150 acres for warehouse and they write that off and only make the warehouse pay for the actual cost that's going to happen when the warehouse is built, we're not going to be able to compete with that if we make them pay for everything when they do it. Am I making sense?
Well, one of the things too is some cities make use of debt financing, either through a Melrose district or an assessment district or through revenue bonds, or they'll put some, for example, water or wastewater costs can be billed into the utility bill, and that pays debt financing. So there are different ways where they use debt financing to reduce their impact fees. That's one thing. Others may have excess capacity in their existing facilities, and so they're charging less to development.
One thing that I know we went through the last time we updated the AB 1600 fees, and Vic, I don't know if we've gone through it this time. Light industrial is a new category. What we did last time, we went back through typical businesses that would fall into this category and looked at their wastewater usage or water usage, et cetera, because one part of this is the demand characteristics of these different categories and how it compares. Have we done that on this? And if we haven't done it, maybe something we want to do? Because that would change the fee, and that could really account for, maybe the assumption that we assume as far as the wastewater generation or the water demand in a light industrial business could be much higher than what some of these other cities are doing. I'm assuming that can be part of it. So we could go back and look at typical businesses in Ripon and make sure we're not too far off on our assumptions with that demand.
I think you make a comment.
Go for it,
Because the concern I have with this is, and there's only so much you can do with it, obviously, but I'm not sure in a lot of cases this is apples to apples, because like you just said, like I said, I think Gateway has a special fee that if you were to include that fee, maybe it's really a lot more expensive, but that's hidden if you walk at our counter and ask for a permit, it's $270, you go to Tracy and it's $180, but there's another $300,000 that's kind of hidden someplace that needs to be taken into consideration. So when somebody looks at this, if you don't dig deep into all the other numbers that come across the Melrose, the assessments, the putting it in a water thing, how do we go about making sure we're comparing apples to apples when somebody walks in our front door or walks in Tracy's front door? I don't know how you do it. I'm asking you for your opinion how to do that to make sure that when we sell it, we're comparing apples to apples.
Well, that's the thing. It is difficult because you don't know if there are certain fees that are hidden in development agreements also. So, there are different financing sources, and for this to really be apples to apples, you have to kind of do an extensive analysis to a greater degree than what our scope included in terms of this work, which was just basically to look at the impact fees.
So when we talk to somebody, we need to say, here it is. But let's now sit down and let's compare everything to the other city you're looking at. So it's going to take more than just handing a fee across a counter. It's going to be sitting down, talking about it, going through it all, really analyzing what the full impacts and fees are. Right?
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
I think that's going to take time and commitment from the other party too, in order to sit down and look at that. Because you look at somebody like Mr. DeGraff, running a small business and doing some of those types of things, do you have time and the inclination to sit down with city staff and let city staff pitch you on moving to their city when you could go to Manteca, some other city, and you might fall under it, you might not, and I don't know, it's a very, very tricky situation to manage in terms of making sure that you're looking at it to apples, because the easy thing is to look at it and go, you're $100,000 more than Manteca? I mean, that's, in some cases, we're making people's decision for them.
And sometimes, the dollar amount is not the bottom line. There are other issues also.
Right. And so I think kind of what Kevin pointed out was making sure that we're aligned with those rights, that we're looking at, that the foundation that we're building off of is the right foundation.
Right. Okay, and from a graphical perspective, for light industrial, Ripon is the 6th bar over. And then lastly, we looked at a hotel fee comparison with the sample project being a 2-acre facility, building size 25,000 square feet. For Ripon, total fees are $412,736. For Lathrop, their fees come in 14% less than Ripon. Manteca is 12% higher. Tracy is 15% lower. Riverbank is 6% higher. Modesto is 5% less, and Turlock is 7% less.
How many rooms is typically a 25,000 square foot hotel?
I'm sorry?
How many rooms would that, how many doors would that be typically? Do you have any idea?
No idea.
It's around a 50 or 60.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, and on the graph, Ripon comes in on the 5th bar there.
Seems like a lot.
And that concludes my presentation. And staff has asked me to request that you provide guidance as far as the fees that we've presented, whether we need to do some additional work on those fees, or whether they look, are they up to your agreement on those?
Councilmember Stusha.
Well, first, let me say that if I'm remembering from the last time, you did incorporate a lot of what we asked to incorporate or that you recommended. The only thing, again, that concerns me is the apples to apples kind of comparison. I want to make sure that we're doing that. I know last time we talked about some realistic examples. For an example, the one we just talked about, light industrial, is 5,000 square feet on 2 acres, really economical. Would it be 10,000? 5,000 square feet is like a house. But again, I'm just thoughts. I don't know what the answers are, and I don't know what to guide you with, but just thoughts.
Just for the light industrial example, it'd be nice to maybe provide a few more examples, because if you're looking at the floor area ratio, it's only like 6% coverage there. However, this is an example of somebody's coming to City Hall and asked of what they want to build on a parcel here in Ripon. Okay. So this is a real world example for us here in town, just to get a comparison of what we are against other communities. Now, are they utilizing their lot to the full potential? No, they're not with the building. So, like I said, we can throw a few more light industrial examples together to get a better idea for at least that fee.
Thanks.
Yeah. Any other comments? Councilman Zuber.
My, I guess, point of interest when I looked at that information is the wide disparity between cities for the same thing. I mean, I don't remember which one it was, but I remember that for, I think it was sewer in Ripon, we were going to charge whatever the project was, about $40,000, and Tracy was going to charge $175,000 for that one fee. But by the time we got to the bottom line, Tracy's fees were lower than Ripon's for the same project. I don't can't wrap my arms around things like that. You know, I don't want to sit here and tell the staff that you got to do better, you got to do better, you got to do better, when we can't because somebody's got something going for them that we don't have going for us. Lathrop, I mean, I don't want to pick on too many people, but Lathrop, I know that you're supposed to pay a habitat mitigation fee and a county facilities fee, and they're in there for us. Lathrop shows it as 0 every time. Now I can see where they, fine, we'll put that building out here where there is no habitat mitigation fee, so we can charge 0, and we may not have one of those here, so I get it. But some of those things I just need some help with, because I don't want to beat up on our people and our situation if the things are genuinely out of our control, and I don't know. I can't believe some of the differences when you start going across and looking at what one city charges and somebody else charges. It just makes no sense to me.
I just have a general comment. How can Lathrop be like the lowest on everything? I understand. I don't want to pick on, like Leo said, I don't want to get in trouble here, but they are the lowest on all ends. How are they paying their bills? I mean, they are, and we're like on the higher end, and they're like low on everything they do. Yeah.
Because you got River Island paying the bill.
Where are they getting their money to stay afloat? Is there
Lathrop's one of those heavy users of financing. So they've got an assessment district out there on properties. They've gotten a CFD district on properties. And so, so a lot of their fees are reduced because of that.
So in effect, somebody gets in at a low upfront cost, but they're going to be paying taxes that our person isn't going to be paying.
That's right.
That's the kind of information we need so that he's got a fighting chance when he's talking to somebody.
But let's go back to talk about one of the things you brought up, because that jumped out at me too, Leo. You don't have habitat for Lathrop, and that's a county habitat mitigation fee that every city in San Joaquin.
Yeah, for Mossdale Landing, I believe the developer paid that off, and so
they factored into the
so
price of
other areas actually
whatever.
do have that habitat mitigation fee and also pay the county CFF fee, but Mossdale Landing they don't pay those fees.
It's really hard to do a line by line comparison, city by city comparison. It really is.
But I think the more we know, the more we can deal with the person who's sitting across the table and saying, this isn't fair. Well, because I remember Modesto ran into the same thing with their businesses on North McHenry. There was supposed to be some sort of a mill tax or something assessed to everybody, and they weren't doing it. They let all those businesses get out there, and finally somebody complained. They said, oh, guess what? You guys owe us. It was in the millions by the time they finally got around to doing it. And then they got to fight now because everybody says that's not fair. You should, and I get it. So I know that they're different, and I really, my whole thing with this, I want to give our staff and our community a fighting chance. I can accept the fact we're not going to win them all, but we need to give them some tools so that we can at least get in the fight a little bit.
Right, and this isn't necessarily a race to the bottom in order to, cut all of our fees to bare bones to where, we're in a situation like Stockton or Outwater.
We could be at the bottom. We don't know. We may be the lowest when you factor. I think I was just telling Jake just a little earlier. This is the beginning of the negotiations, is what these things are. Because anybody that's been in this kind, I've built buildings, I've built businesses. When you start out with this. But when you start talking about everything involved, sitting down, behind the counter, and now starting to do the analysis, we may look pretty good once you put all that in place. I don't know.
Yeah, and Vic, I think one of the other questions I had on this was, and maybe for the council's benefit, is it also, when you look at things like transportation in particular, it depends on what level of service the community has adopted as acceptable level of service, right? So if you want to live in a community that has a D or an E level of service, and their development impact fees are lower, well, that's great, but Ripon doesn't want a D or an E level of service. We want a C level of service. So you're always going to be higher than the other community that has a D or an E level of service. So, I mean, those are other variables that go into this.
Well, I can accept that, but when I look at that map and see that there's 38 intersections that we're planning on putting stop signals in as part of our fee, I got to ask myself, do we need to look at that?
It's a
I
fair
mean, is that
question.
really,
Yeah.
I don't want to end up needing 38 and only have collected enough money for 10.
Yeah.
But by the same token, if 50 years from now, we only have 10 and we've collected money for 38, can't spend it on anything else except borrow it to build another city hall and then pay that off over the next.
Usually the number of fees that you end up being way positive in is a lot smaller than the ones that you under collect. That's typically how it works, but, yeah.
Well, I think the thing that bugs me, and it bugs people trying to come to Ripon, we've had multiple people want to come to Ripon, but they're knocked out of the water right on that original price. I mean, I could sit here and name them, a dozen of them. My thought is, I mean, what are these, like Manteca, I guess when Bass Pro came in, they waived all kinds of stuff. But by doing that, they made so much. I mean, look at the build out around that place. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm not saying that's what we should do and that's what we want to do, but I mean, I got to go every week to Modesto to get my car washed. There's not a car wash in Ripon, and we ran those people off. They bought
My grandson will do it for you.
And I'm not. I mean, I don't have the answer, but it would be nice that we could get some of these businesses to actually follow through. I mean, Ken probably knows better than I do. He deals with all those people, and when they see that big fee, they walk.
Well, and I think some of it comes down to, and I know that both Ken and Kevin have had a dramatically positive effect on this, is the culture. I know in the past we haven't had the most welcoming culture in the world in terms of businesses, and I know the three of us have talked extensively about how do you bring in businesses, what type of incentives do you provide, and I think, we've always just kind of looked at the fee structure as just getting yourself into the conversation, to making sure that you're, not cutting yourself so thin that when tough times hit, you are really not prepared for it. But the fee structure is just to get yourself into the conversation. And then, as Tom said, then you can come down to the level of service and the different economic incentive things that you're going to provide. And I think, that's at least the way that I've looked at this problem and the fee structures is to make sure that we're competitive, so that way we do have those opportunities for those businesses, so that way when they are ready to come in, we can work with them and bring them in. So,
question: so how many people just call up and say, "What are your fees?" and they hang up? I mean, or what I mean is, like, you're too high, you hang up, or hand us across the counter. Typically, these are things where you sit down and you have a discussion about, I want to build a building. What does it cost? What other fees are on top of that? I mean, I've done it. It takes hours and hours to figure out where you're going to go and what you're going to pay. It's not like you just pick up a piece of paper with some fee on it and hand it to somebody and, yeah, you're too high, I'm going down the street. There's all kinds of different hidden fees and costs and leverage and all kinds of things involved. It gets more complicated than just handing out a fee schedule. At least that's in my experience. I don't know what you guys experience.
No, it is. We sit down with a lot of folks and go through these. Like I said, I think the initial shock is just seeing the fees. When you look at a square foot per land cost in other towns. I think this first cut at the fees that we've gone through is probably a really good first cut at it here. I think the only one I would think maybe we'd want to take a little bit better look at or get a little deeper into would be the light industrial fee. We just split that category off. So let's see if we can work with that. The other ones, we're right in the middle of the pack. I mean, there's no sense being the low end on this thing and cutting all our fees off. And we're not the highest either. I mean, you're looking at towns directly adjacent to you where they might want to go in Manteca or Modesto. We're right there with them on most of all of these, except for the light industrial right now.
There may be costs on top of that don't show in the fee schedule that we're talking about. There could be some sort of Melrose, some other stuff. So that's what I'm saying. It becomes a discussion item. It's the beginning of the discussion. It's not the final, here you go. And hopefully it works.
Well, I agree with Mike. I think I've said it earlier. We need more background behind some of the fees in some of these other communities so that we can get closer to apples and apples. How we go about doing that, I don't know. I will be the first one to sit here and say I do not think that is something we should expect the staff to do along with everything else. Sometimes if you're going to look at something, you better be ready to put some money into it. And if it means another one of those famous consultants, in my mind, this is a place where we need help. And if we're going to invest, let's invest some money and get some more information.
And that may be a cheap expenditure for what we're going to get.
In the long run.
You bet.
Yeah, when we embarked on this process here, we thought we might find a fee or two that was an outlier for us. But looking at them, they are kind of all over the board. I think the retail comparison, Mr. Zuber, you were talking about, was water for retail comparison for Ripon was $40,000, and Tracy's at $160,000.
Yeah,
and so they're all over the board. And you've got Modesto with the storm drainage. We're at $32,000. Modesto's $0. Well, there's a reason Modesto's $0.
We don't have storm drainage.
Oh.
That's correct.
No, their streets flood.
That's
so,
right.
Their streets flooding is their storm drainage.
Because they got to still pay for their system from SSGID.
All they do is drill a hole. When it's full, it's full.
Evaporation, then.
Then you put your waves on and
yeah.
get your four-wheel drive and drive through.
Okay. So, yeah, so how does the council want to proceed with this? Because this is a discussion item. What type of direction do we want to get staff?
Well, I'll take a stab at it. I think you do need to continue to work at the light industrial and see if there's some way that we can get in the ballpark. And I also think you need to start looking at somehow to collect some information about, especially the San Joaquin County cities, about how they arrive at the numbers that they arrive at. Because some of them are totally foreign to what we have. And like I say, I don't expect necessarily that Ken's going to spend an hour, 2 days at Tracy talk. We can find ways to find the information. But I think I would like that simply because if I'm going to be sitting here looking at two different fees that are $25,000 apart, it's one thing to know that, and it's apples to apples. It's another thing to know that, and we're talking apples and tangerines, and that tangerine is actually $25,000 higher when you put all the rest of the stuff together. We don't know that now.
Are you thinking you want to schedule a workshop?
No, I just wanted to
you just want, okay.
do their thing
Okay.
and bring it back with another report. Yeah.
So, because this could be a deep dive into it that takes a while, so I just want to make sure with that. Councilmember Stuccia?
Well, and I agree with that 100%. But I think the other thing we can do if we decide we want to hire somebody, we can hire people to go into these cities, sit down with a project, and go through the process of what will it cost for me to build this facility. Once I build it, what are my costs after I build it? Are there any fees on top of that? Are there any property taxes? Is there any mellow roofs? And come out and know what the exact costs are. I mean, that's done all the time. All the time to figure out. And a smart businessman does that. Even the dumb ones do it. They don't. They sit down and talk about it. So, we could get a consultant to do that for us and figure out what the entire, you can figure out, let's say you figure out what the 5-year cost of that project is. Because maybe there's some fees that kicking down the road or something like that. But either you pay up front or you pay on an annualized basis like an annuity forever. At the end of the day, that could become more expensive than what appears to be higher fees today. No way to do is to go market it or not market, survey it, if you will, or whatever you call it.
Yeah. Okay. So you're done?
I'm done.
Anybody else? Okay. So You're going to have to repeat your direction.
We don't need a motion, do we?
No. We're providing direction.
Okay, well, one is to work on the light industrial
Okay.
thing, and number two is to start figuring out a way to start gathering some more information, background information to how these fees in some of these towns are derived, because we need to know what arrows they have in their quiver. Maybe we want to move a couple of them to ours, I don't know.
Okay.
Well, on top of that, then, besides that, what else is there involved with in terms of, is there going to be some debt payments that need to be paid off beyond all this stuff that would look cheaper today but more expensive in the long run? I think we got to incorporate all of that.
No, that's what I'm talking about.
Okay, all right, okay.
Yeah. So you get all that, Mr. Warner?
Yes. He's an
Okay.
engineer.
All right. Moving on to 8B.
Can we just approve that? I'm just
kidding. Dan, you already sold it.
Thank you.
That's why did you screw up my thing here on purpose?
It was for effect, yeah. About 2 months ago, your guys' direction, we started looking at some options to make some improvements to the AV setup here in this room. Both looking at some improvements to the projection screen, the side screens, and then as well as addressing some of the concerns with the touch screen, the voting system that you guys are having. And I think we saw it even tonight. I saw some jab in some of those screens. So we first started with, we reached out to the folks that did the original build in the room, and really just kind of left it open-ended and said, hey, we're looking at some improvements. What can we do? And they came back with a price that was a little bit higher than what we were looking for, and really didn't address much of the voting. So there was some improvements to a new projector, new screen, some changes to the screens that you have in front of you, the displays, but really nothing with the voting or any of that technology. And I'm going to separate out the price of the projector for reasons I'll get to in a few minutes, but their price excluding the projector is about $30,000. For some improvement, but not as much as we'd like to see for the voting. So we put a group together and went and looked at the Board of Supervisors, the County Board of Supervisors chamber. They had just completed some renovations, made some changes, so we wanted to look and see what they had done. One of the biggest things that we walked away with from that discussion is they found the same thing that we did. The system that they're using, they use the same equipment manufacturer, the same type design for touchscreens. They had very much the same issues. It was inflexible in terms of making changes to it. It was unreliable. As hard as they worked at making it reliable and work, it just failed in kind of new and unpredictable ways. So they have all but abandoned that system. They're using just a portion of it for the control of the video switching, but they moved away from that for meeting flow and voting and all that. They are also in the process of making a decision on a projector. Their chambers is set up very much, it's similar to ours in that there's a large window area that gets daylight that washes the screen. But they've yet to come up with a solution and a final answer on what they're going to do for the projector. So part of the report, and I'll get to the details in that in just a minute, includes a recommendation to kind of wait and see what they do, use them as an example and see kind of the solution that they come up with for a screen that should hopefully address some of the daylight wash, which is why, as the sun's setting, the screen gets really dim because there's so much light on the front side of it. So this report doesn't have a specific conclusion for that because we're still kind of waiting to see what they do. Two of the things, the points that I do want to get into, recommendations I have tonight, is that we follow suit with the Board of Supervisors to get rid of the touchscreen system altogether. So we'd pull those screens out. We would replace it with just a monitor at each of your positions that displays the same thing that's on the video here and on the front projection that doesn't require interaction. So you don't have to zoom into it or expand it or bring it down. It's just going to be kind of off to the side and it'll always show what's up on the screen. And then the other portion is the use of a software package by a company called Acela. So they have they call it the Digital Boardroom, but it's a full suite of software that takes the agenda creation from the very beginning, the part that's so labor intensive for Tricia. there's different groups, different departments submit items through the system, and it manages and maintains that. So they put in the information that they want on the agenda, and it kind of collects all those things, and then she can go through and approve those and build. So it automates that and really eliminates a lot of the tedious kind of repetitive work that goes into building the agenda. So it streamlines that process. And then at the time of the meeting, it actually streamlines that as well. So that on the devices that you have, rather than trying to scroll through and keep up, through the system, as we advance through the agenda, it automatically advances your view to the current item. So there's a screen that has kind of there's a bar at the top that just has the title of the agenda item, and then all the supplemental information, the packet that you guys are having to navigate through pages to find, it automatically advances to that as the meeting progresses. And voting is done through that same system. So when there's a call for a vote, it pops up a bar on your screen, similar to what you see with a touchscreen, but it's all built into that same software package. The advantage here and the benefit to using a software package like that's a commercial product, so many other agencies use it that some of the bugs and the things that we see with our system here are eliminated because there's ongoing development. So this system that was installed in roughly 2007 hasn't seen a major update since it was installed at that time. The software that I'm recommending, it's updated on a regular basis. Part of the subscription fee that we'll pay goes to providing those updates. So if there's a bug with one process, it's going to be identified because there are boards just like ours up and down the state and across the nation using the product. They get that user input, and they have a development team that fixes it and pushes out updates automatically. And so the other portion I include a little bit, just updating some of the computers and things that we use to supplement and to support the meeting. So the PowerPoints that you'd see, a little bit newer computer that would just that would perform a little bit better and take advantage of new visual effects and things that are in PowerPoints. And then a second one that would just drive the agenda being back on the projector display. So the other nice portion about that is we'd get back to the audience can see, they keep track of where we're at on the agenda as well. The screen would always display the current item that the meeting's on.
Assuming they can see the screen.
Assuming that we see the screen. That is the one big thing that's still not, like I said, still not resolved in this report, just because we think we've got a pretty good opportunity to watch how the county resolves that problem and hopefully learn from their experience and the direction that they go with the projector. So the benefit here, using our in-house talent and abilities, we figure we can do the same thing for about a $10,000 one-time cost, and then just shy of $15,000 a year for the Acela package, which incorporates the digital boardroom, so the agenda preparation and the actual meeting flow when the meeting's going on.
15,000 every year.
Annually, $15,000.
Does that mean Trish is going to get a paid deduction because her job's being used?
That is not in my recommendation, no.
That's a smart recovery over there.
So there is the cost is the issue. At this point, I think what our experience shows us is that we've done all that we can with the current equipment, the current system, to get it functional and to kind of work out some of those bugs. And it's just we're not the only ones that are seeing some of the starting to see some of the cracks show in the systems. Be happy to entertain any questions.
Councilman Zuber.
I have a couple questions. One, as I recall, when we went and looked at their system, well, I'll back up a minute. Are you assuming that we're going to continue to use the Surface computers?
Yes.
Because when we went up there, they had laptops with 15-inch screens and said their experience was that the supervisors needed bigger screens because that thing, that as I recall at times, that screen's cut into smaller chunks. I have enough trouble reading one page on that Surface if it's going to be cut into 3 pieces while I'm trying to keep track.
Yeah,
I got a problem with that.
That was one of the things that we had kind of discussed internally was whether to look at doing that upgrade in this first approach, or to if you guys decide to move forward, get a feel for how the system works with the current devices, and then look at that down the road. For comparison, the machines that they spec, you're talking roughly $1,500 a piece. So the napkin math there, and that's definitely something that we can add into it.
Okay.
It's just
I'd like you to look at it.
we noted.
The other question has to do with that annual fee and the use of this room. Up until now, basically to let somebody use this room, all they were looking at was the utilities. Now, to have a meeting, if they want to have access to this stuff, we're putting out $1,300 a month for one meeting. And if somebody else is going to come in here and use it, I think we need to, whether we do it or not, but I think it's reasonable to start looking at some sort of a fee. It's one thing to buy a computer that lasts 5 years and then buy another one. But if we're going to pay that every year that we use this system, I'm just throwing it out there. I think we need to talk about it.
If I could just add a clarification point there, the license that we get through Acela does support multiple boards, so it wouldn't just be with that fee, they do support multiple boards. So the Planning Commission, the other boards.
I'm willing to listen, but at this point, the technology in this room moves from a one-time cost to an ongoing cost, and I think that needs to be looked at.
Councilmember Stuccia. Wait, oh, I'm sorry, Councilman Zuber, were you done? Yeah.
And at one time, and that ongoing cost may be cheaper than the cost you spend doing all this stuff every single day trying to fix everything. These things are terrible. Okay, so I want to make sure I understand. So these would be replaced with a non-touchscreen monitor.
Right.
That would have the agenda scrolling for us.
Yeah, essentially think of it, it would have the same as what you see on the screen there.
So we can still have our service to go back and forth. How would we vote? And then how would maybe you said all this, sorry if I missed it. How would we vote, and then how would the mayor know who wants to speak next? Is there going to be a separate?
Yeah, both of those functions are built into the software package. So there's a vote when the time comes when we call for the vote. There's a bar that just kind of floats in from the top of the screen with your yes, no, and abstain
So
buttons.
it will be touch screen for that?
No, on the surface. I'm sorry.
Okay, so everything
right
off of here.
On my Surface Pad.
Yeah.
Oh,
So it moves all of the interaction, everything
It'll all
there,
connect.
as well as the request to speak. So it's all built into.
I thought you
the
said that, but
service.
I wasn't sure. Okay, and so the mayor will have one that says Dean wants to speak next or something?
Yeah, there's a slightly different view for the mayor, the chair, whatever they designate.
And you can control that all through your board. You don't necessarily need the mayor every year to switch computers.
Right.
with
There's
somebody.
that parallel control.
You'll start running the mayor.
Yeah, that
You
could
just
be.
don't want to say it.
Could be. Okay.
No, we need it.
Does the council have any other comments, thoughts, suggestions?
We need to move forward, because this is ridiculous.
This is almost 10 years old, which is about 1,000 years in technology
Mm-hmm.
world.
Yep. Okay. So I think we've provided Mr. Brandon some good direction. So, sounds good. All right. Discussion item 8C.
Who speaks, me?
Yes.
It says Councilman Mr. Zuber.
Councilman Mr. Zuriel. In spite of what was in the newspaper today, I'm not espousing anything. This issue of whether or not events and things would be permitted within the city of Ripon and involve alcohol has been floating around for at least over 2 years.
Yep.
There have been presentations at the city council. The chamber has talked about it, and it just keeps kind of floating around. And I decided it was time to get it here, get it out, talk about it, and decide whether we want to do anything or not. I have no investment in this other than it needs to be talked about at the council level, apparently. And that's what the little thing that I sent is. It's a place to start. In my own mind, if we're going to do it, it needs to be in a very controlled environment. And I tried to pick a couple of situations that have been bantered around for the 2 years as possible places to start. Am I saying we should do it? Nope. Am I saying it has to be done that way? No. It's just a place to start. I don't like having conversations where there's nothing to talk about. Everybody just kind of shoots off for 20 minutes and then we don't know where we are when we're done. So that's it. Rest of it is up to the rest of you to weigh in and see what you want to do.
Does council have any thoughts, comments? Councilmember Stuccia.
I'll just make a comment. Yeah, it's been going on a long time. Before I even ran for city council, this was brought to me probably about a year before that. It's been talked about and talked about. I don't know what the answer is. My only comment will be is this controls it. It's happening now. I see it all the time. At least this kind of controls it. I'm not advocating for it. I'm just saying it's more control than, everybody's doing it now in their Coke cans. So, I'm telling you,
Yeah.
being factual.
Does council have any other thoughts, comments?
Okay, 7-Up cans, sorry.
So,
You got those plastic wrap things you use.
Might ask the audience too.
well. Yeah, we've got time.
Blown through whatever.
We wouldn't
Yeah.
spend an hour on it.
Yeah, seriously. Okay. All right. So, Councilman Zuber. Oh, go ahead.
I'd just
Vice
like
Mayor
to say, I think there's no reason why we can't have some kind of ordinance where you could, like the restaurants downtown, if it's going to help them do business, and if you're going to have functions, and like Mike said, people are drinking anyway at certain functions. So if you put it out there and you have some kind of control over it, or you do have control over it, I got to believe it would be a better situation. But like I say, I don't know how far you go with it. I can remember when I first moved to Ripon, we used to drink beer right on the ball field out there. It got out of control.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was a madhouse out there, and that's not what we don't want to see that come back. And I know the police chief don't want to see that come back either.
Right. And I think the police chief has some valid concerns with that, but at the same time, I think it can and does act as a social catalyst and as a business catalyst. I mean, there's an event at Spring Creek going on this weekend that, alcohol is involved in that. And there's most other events where alcohol is, if you don't have it, it's very, very difficult to get people to come to your event. And it's very socially accepted, and it's almost to the point where it's socially expected, where if you have an event that there is some type of beverage there. And a lot of it is, the crowd that's around you. You will have, every once in a while somebody getting crazy and out of control, but for the most part, PD's done a very good job, and there's a lot of good self-regulation that's involved with it. So, it's, as already has been stated up here, it's been something that's been floating around and something that's the business community has pushed in to allow them to open up doors to different venues and different opportunities. So I think it is something that we need to look at and explore. So,
do you think we should, I don't know, Leo, what do you think? Should we have a committee with a couple council people and citizens and with the police chief and stuff, or we want to resolve it with us five?
Relative to what? I'm not sure I
well,
understand.
there's no.
To bring something back.
You're talking about continuing to further the discussion, creating like a working group.
Get a little bit of public comment in on it. I think that under the right ordinances and conditions, being able to have a glass of wine or a beer out in front of a restaurant with an organized event would be great. And I know there's a lot of other cities that do this, as long as we keep it under control, and I think it's a good idea.
I guess my reaction is the process of developing and eventually approving an ordinance provides the people in the community ample opportunity to weigh in on this. You can start a committee and see what you want to do, but in my experience, until this council decides to do something, everybody's just going to sit back. It's when we do or don't do something that people will come out. That's really why I started doing this, because I go here and somebody talks about it. I go here, somebody talks about it. I go there and somebody talks about it. It's just talk. Okay. Do we or don't we? Now, if you want a committee, that's fine.
No, I'm not saying we
That's
want
fine.
to do a committee. I'm saying
Yeah.
that's.
But
I don't have a problem working it out right here. Not maybe tonight. I'm a little bit hungry and I haven't had dinner yet.
You were staying.
And now you're making me thirsty.
Yeah. Yeah.
your call, Mr.
Yeah.
Mayor.
Yeah.
Thanks. That's right.
Remember, it's a re-election year.
Not supposed to say that up here.
Oh, sorry.
So,
Just state the fact.
yeah. I think it is something that needs to have a working group with the expectation of crafting an ordinance to allow this type of activity, to where it isn't just talk, to where it's something that is actually a tangible goal, to where we can get community input, where we can make sure we can get staff's input, where we can make sure we can get the police chief's input, so that way it can be done responsibly, safely, and where we're allowing our businesses an opportunity and a venue to succeed where there wasn't previously one. So I think that similar to our other committees, it should be 2 council members, the police chief, member of city staff, and then at least 1 member of the public, if not 2. So that's kind of my thought. I'm open to suggestions as to the composition of the working group.
I think we ought to think somebody from the public ought to maybe be a restaurant owner downtown.
Yeah.
A restaurant owner, when she said restaurant owner, so I don't designate you downtown.
Yeah.
I think ought to be somebody that does that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good suggestion. Yeah. Somebody who's involved in the industry.
Yeah, I'd like to see a couple people from the public at least.
Well,
Not
that's
only
just
a
one.
restaurant owner,
Yeah,
and
two,
then
but
just
that's one.
general member of the general public that would like to
Mm-hmm.
get involved in that. Yeah.
Oh, hey, I'm just, Chief had a pretty bad frown on his face, but he found a smile, so I don't know. Somebody, Chief, go ahead. say
I think we have 4 or 5 volunteers.
Yeah.
Well, when I looked out, they all
God
looked
might
down.
reopen up the
Uh-huh.
Barnwood, huh? We can have parties outside.
So is that how the council would like to proceed? 2
Yeah, I
council
think so.
members,
Sure.
member of city staff.
How about somebody from the planning commission?
If you get it
Yeah.
too big, you're not going to.
Yeah, you're not gonna
You just
get
a lot of
anything
good
done.
ideas.
You need 5,
Yeah.
so you have a tiebreaker.
5.
You need 5.
5. Okay.
Yeah.
So then we're gonna do.
Well, it's recommendation,
Yeah.
it's not a vote.
Yeah, that's true. Okay.
Yeah.
I think you
Okay.
should put a time frame on it so this gets done, so it doesn't just keep.
It doesn't
carrying
just
on.
drag on.
You know, what I
Yeah.
mean? Get somebody appointed, meet on a regular basis and
Yeah.
come back with something as soon as.
So is there any council members that would like to volunteer for this?
I'd like to
Committee?
try it. I'd like
Okay.
to be involved.
Councilman Winchell?
Well, Leo's idea, I think he should be on. You don't talk for me.
That's the first time you've got to rise out of him in
What
4 years.
does it say on here?
Yeah.
Councilmember Zuber has requested this on the agenda.
Yeah.
That's on the agenda.
Mm-hmm.
I think you ought to take them off the
Yeah.
hook and make them.
I don't have a problem
their-
doing it, but.
With vice
Go
mayor.
ahead. Yeah, it
So-
don't bother me one
Okay.
way or the other,
Okay. So.
Since I'm a non-drinker anyway, might be a good place.
Okay,
for me.
so we have 2 council members, Councilman Winchell and Councilman
Great.
Huber, who will form this working group, and they will coordinate with 2 citizens, preferably, or for sure? Did we decide?
Well, I would say you want to include a restaurant owner.
Yeah.
But what if they all say no?
Yeah.
So I think it's
Yeah.
preferable, but.
Yeah, working with at least a citizen and a business owner on this, and then obviously city staff and chief.
Whatever, I know the chamber is concerned, do we get somebody from the chamber?
Yeah, they could be the community member. Yeah.
That'll work.
Yeah. Okay. So, and then report back next city council meeting on your progress.
You do?
It's just a thought. I don't care who it is, to be honest with you. But it probably, I think it makes sense to have somebody downtown that has a business that it's either, whether they're going to.
But you were just told it shouldn't be a chamber member.
No.
No, the citizen shouldn't be a chamber.
Well, I'm a chamber member.
Yeah.
But then, it doesn't,
I'm kidding. It's all doable.
it's all doable. Well,
Yeah.
It's all doable.
Yeah, okay, we'll get it going.
Okay, and so then you'll report back
Next week.
Well, I will try to get somebody together and get a meeting going as soon as possible.
Okay.
And then we'll go from there. All right, but then we'll have something to report back by next
So
meeting.
it's 2 council members, 2 city staff, a member of the community, and then a business owner.
Do we think we should get the fire chief involved in that? Is that something that we need to do or no?
I would say no.
Chief says
Chief will
no.
vote his. He said that they-
If I may just provide some input, we'll be in communications with them. I don't know if they need necessarily be part of the committee, but we'll have interactions to share the information.
Okay. So then it's a 6-member committee.
Okay.
Yep. All right. We look forward to hearing your report next week.
How about the local corn distributor?
All right. Moving on to staff reports. Chief Ormonde.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, Honorable City Council, I have a treat for you tonight. I have a 30-slide presentation for you. Just joking, it's just 5. And we'll run through them pretty quickly here. Just a mid-year report on crime and activity within the city. This will be from January 1st through June 30th of this year. Dan, go to the next slide, please. It's kind of hard to tell. This is why we need the new projector, correct, Dan? If any member of the community would like this slide presentation, I'll be happy to email it to you or give a printout. This slide just kind of covers total incidents, call for service, and officer-initiated activity. The numbers highlighted in gold or yellow are the highest in the 9-year period. This year, actually the last 5 years are about identical. They run between the low 11,000s to the mid 12,000s from 2011 through 2016 for total incidents. Calls for service, those are the calls that are coming into our dispatch center. They all remain pretty identical except for that 2008-2009 year. This year we're about 100, not even that, probably about 30 less than we did the first part of last year. The big drop, or the bigger drop, is in officer-initiated activity, and compared to last year, we're down about 600.
Chief, can I ask a question? I don't mean to interrupt you, but 2011, were we short officers or something? I mean, that was a big drop in officer-initiated activity.
There was a lot of things that were going on regarding AB 109. There was, in 2010, we let off I shouldn't say a whole bunch of officers, but a tremendous amount of staff.
Okay.
So when you look at 2008, 2009, and the beginning of 2010, we had 4 additional officers, additional CSO officers, additional other staff that were processing paperwork and so forth that are now being assumed by other department staff. So there's less time on the street during that time.
Thanks.
And we also had an OTS grant from 2007, 8, and 9 that gave us a full-time traffic officer, which you'll see later on in the slides. We had a huge increase in traffic stops and so forth, which have been reduced since that position's gone away. This is the slide I was talking about. The first line is our traffic stops. As you can see, in 2009, in the first 6 months of that year, we did over 4,000 traffic stops. The first 6 months of this year, we did just above 1,800. Vehicle pedestrian checks run about the same the last 3 years. Prior to that, we had some incorrect data, which doesn't allow us to go back past 2012. And our COPS contacts, which is our non-enforcement community service contacts, which is at our schools, downtown businesses, and in our residential neighborhoods. We actually have increased to 1,000 during the first 6 months, which last year we did just over 700. The bottom line is our total reports taken, and this first 6 months of this year we're down roughly 60. We'll go to the next slide. This goes to our UCRs, which we put out at the end of each month, and we also put out a quarterly report on our social media pages. Again, the gold, our yellow highlighted numbers are lows for the 9-year period that are up on the screen. We really haven't seen a huge increase or decrease in many of these, other than our aggravated assault, which were down 5. That's one of those things that calculate into how safe our community is. And also our robberies are up, but we're not getting robberies that are associated with weaponry. It's by use of force or fear that those robberies are occurring. And if we go down to simple assaults, we are seeing it's about on average as it has been the last several years. We have seen a slight decline over the first 6 months, but since then we have seen an increase with physical assaults, especially domestic violence.
Hey, Chief? We haven't had any bank robberies in a while, have we?
I'm trying to find some wood. No, we have not. The last one, I believe, has been approximately 2.5 years ago. We've taken some steps to try to help alleviate that from occurring within our community, whether it's that or other things that are going on. We do have very alert and banking staff within our community that alert us to suspicious activity, which hopefully we're able to address before it gets to that point. But overall, we just have a very alert community that sometimes allows us to intercede those types of actions before they occur, and hopefully we can identify people and have them move on before the crime occurs.
And parking police cars around banks and stuff really help as well.
Yes. Next slide. This is the continuation of our Part 1 crimes. I didn't want to put it all on one page like I normally do because it becomes even much more difficult to see. We've had a decrease in our burglaries over the past 3 years. In 2013, we're at 32. This year, we're at 9. That includes vehicle burgs and residential and commercial burgs. So just over 1 per month. We'd rather have that number at 0, but we are trending in the right direction. Our larcenies have actually increased. These are just general thefts. Most of those larcenies are from unlocked vehicles, items that are left out on front lawns or front porches. But we've seen a significant increase in shoplifting, where usually we were able to charge a burglary. Now we can only charge a misdemeanor theft. And so there's less accountability for those type of actions, and we're starting to see a little bit of a spike on that. Our stolen vehicles are about the same. Arsons are at 0, and then our total, with the bottom number, over the past 10 years, if you include 2007, through the first 6 months, our UCR reported crimes are at its lowest in this past 10 years.
Are these the numbers before? Are those at 6 months, or are those the total year?
Those are at 6 months.
So the numbers are all
they're all
okay.
Yeah, they're all January 1 through June 30th.
So we're doing good.
So yes, our overall we're doing very well. We're down about 3% from last year, and through July we're actually down about 7%. So we are trending in the right direction. We're hoping to maintain that momentum, and through our partnerships, we're able to, with our businesses, community, and other county agencies, we're able to do that. So there's some positive news. And then we'll go to the second to last slide, which just covers arrests. So far, through the first 6 months, we have 510 arrests, which is down about 110 from last year. A lot of those are due to the activity that was occurring down at the river. that is no longer occurring due to steps that have been taken by our community and our police agency. So we're having less activity down there, which are resulting in less citations and arrests. So that's a huge impact. As you can see, prior to that, we are up slightly from 2013 to 2014, but 2015 was a spike because of those activities that were down at the river. And since we've handled those incidents, we're starting to trend back down. The interesting thing is our felony arrests. With all the legislative measures that have passed with the decriminalization, reclassification of crime, we're at our average. So crime's still occurring. Felony crimes are still occurring, even though that a lot of them have been declassified to misdemeanors. I'm sorry, that was total arrest. Then we go down to our misdemeanors, and then one of the other telling items is our crime reports, which is the bottom line. We are about 120 crime reports less than what we did the first 6 months of last year. To me, that's pretty telling. I believe we have most of our citizens calling in crime reports, so I don't think this is attributed to people not calling us, because we do get calls. We encourage people to call. So if we're having that much crime not occur in our community, that's also a good sign. And then our last slide, Dan. This is just kind of a hotspot map of our community. I think this has a little pointer. So these areas up here, they're kind of a dull green. Those are our city parks, so those aren't part of that. Spring Creek, Missland, and the river access areas, Jacktown Golf, those aren't included in that. But these other greens, those are areas that we have incidents reported for that first 6 months. Now, they're not all calls for service. And as you can see, the red spot up here, that's by the truck stop area. That doesn't mean we have an enormous amount of calls for service at these places, but these could include vehicle code violations where we're making traffic stops or other things that we're doing. So that it's not necessarily just calls for service or that there's crimes occurring. Anytime we call off an incident, like the 1,000 non-enforcement contacts we made over the first 6 months, those are included in here. So anytime that we're calling out that we're stopping and talking to somebody or going into a business or taking enforcement action would populate on this map. So that kind of tells you where we're spending a majority of our time, which is kind of scattered throughout the city. And that's really what we want. We want to be well represented, we want to be well seen, and we want to be able to have those positive interactions with our community. That's it on the 6-month presentation. Just a couple of the quick announcements. Just want to thank everybody that participated and that partnered up with us for the National Night Out last Tuesday. Tomorrow night at 7 p.m. we have our AOR meeting in the Police Department Emergency Operations Center. And everybody's welcome. We'd love everybody to attend that. And then just as a reminder, Thursday is the first day of school. Please drive safely and slow down. Thank you.
Mr. Johnson.
That's enough report for everybody.
I'll make mine quick. Wanted to update the council on our efforts, our water conservation efforts for the month of July. In July, we placed 158 door hangers or notices on residences' doors for not following the regulations. A lot of those were because we had the power outage for the citywide power outage, or half the community's power outage, where a lot of folks lost their programming. So it was a little bit of a spike. Last month we issued 14 penalty assessments, and we had a reduction of 29% from the year of 2013. So we're still doing pretty close to what we did last year for the conservation.
Ted, can I ask a question since you're on water? Were you done?
Yes.
So my little water app said that I had a little leak of 0.22 gallons per hour. Your system showed 47 gallons per hour. I don't use 47 gallons per hour times 24. I don't even use that in a day. So there's a little glitch. But now we found a leak and got fixed a couple of days ago, but it still shows it. And I'm only bringing it up because you may get calls from people. And
I know Sarah's looking into it. Sarah and Lisa looking into the issue why there was a discrepancy, and they're contacting Badger and trying to find that out. We are watching water leakage closely. Kevin, our water conservation coordinator is going out and, picking the top water leaks and top water users and making contact. So he's making a lot of contacts, looking for those very things. We're trying to get to the bottom of why that one, yours was a little bit different, because it was a multiplier of 10 off, but we will get to the bottom of it.
Thank you. Mr. Stevens? What? Oh, I'm sorry. Councilman Zuber?
Like in November, can we get a report that shows the total number of notices you put out and the total number of fines that were issued? And one more, how many of those fines are paid?
Yes, we've just recently started sending out reminder notices to the folks that, because we've got about 50% of the folks that haven't paid. So we're in the process of reminding, sending second notices out to the folks, reminding about 50% of the folks step up to the plate and pay. The others, we're going to have to put a fire under their tail. So.
Have we had to issue a second fine to anybody?
That I'm not sure. I believe we have at least one that's a second fine.
I'd like to get kind of a comprehensive look at the whole thing when it's over, not in the middle. But okay,
we can do that.
Mr. Stevens, Mr. Zidor.
I can't top those two, so I'm going to pass.
Mr. Keith?
Yeah, real quick, the engineering department does have two projects currently advertised to bid. One is the 2016 asphalt rubber Cape Seal project, and then the other is our well 5 and 12 rehabilitation project. And those are going to be opened at the end of the month, and just wanted to update the council.
Excellent, thank you. Mr. Terpstra, Mr. Warner, Councilman Winchell, Councilman Rastusha.
I don't have a report, but I have a question because it's interesting. I had a note down here to ask this before all these people spoke about the park. And my note was explain, because I've been contacted about it. Explain the contract at Midland Park is resolved. I know we had some people come and talk to us before. I thought this stuff was all resolved. I thought we took care of it and we didn't hear a thing again. Then all this stuff's going on. Can you have something for us next month to kind of tell us what's going on? Is it being maintained? Isn't it being maintained? Are they living up to their contract? Are they not living up to the contract? Just so we know, because there's a lot of people very upset beyond just what we heard tonight. Whoever. You don't have to answer that now. But
yeah, of course we can. Just if there's specific things, just shoot Ted or myself an email.
Well, you heard it.
Yeah, all of that's covered. But I will get with Ted and we go out there on a weekly basis and check it out. So,
okay. All right. Okay. Thank you, Councilman Zuber.
I have one thing. I think. Yes. Fireworks. We put an ordinance in place that was supposed to deal with illegal fireworks. Can we get a report of how many violations were reported, how many violations were cited, how many fines were collected? Not now, but, and then can we also get the chamber maybe to come to the next meeting and report on the fireworks program as to how they viewed, they did it, how they viewed it, was it a success or not, that sort of thing.
Sounds good.
That's it.
Sounds good. Danielle, you have your orders?
She's only the secretary.
Well, there's 3 chamber members here.
Yeah, I know. I just like to pick on Danielle. Vice Mayor Euchre?
Nada.
He's hungry.
Yes. I have nothing to report either. So, and with that, we will close the city council meeting.